I'm glad you're here.
Committee meeting for May 5th, 2025. Councilor Smith.
Here.
Gwaltney.
Here.
Alamon's out. Brandt. Here. And Mr. Hart.
Hopefully he will join us momentarily. All right, can I get a motion to dispense with the reading and approval of the minutes from our meeting on April 21st? God, it seems like a long time ago.
So moved.
All right, motion for Mr. Gwaltney.
Second.
Second for Mr. Brandt. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 3-0 to approve those minutes as produced. Okay. I have some folks coming for a street light issue, which I'm going to let them go first so they can get out of here, but until they get inside the building. On our old business agenda, we have 020225, which is request permission to provide an update on the Kenilworth Stormwater Project from Mr. Smith. There's some good news on that front.
We're getting really close. The rain last week has slowed them down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then one of the homeowners they're going to have to regrade some things, but yeah, it's moving forward. They're hoping to be out by Friday.
Out completely?
They hope.
And that's just from the construction side, that's not from the re-landscape improvement
So
side.
they will do the re-landscaping. I'll have something coming to you guys in a couple of weeks for the fence behind John's house, and then some gutter work up on Kenilworth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are they going to, at any point in the near future, maybe I should address this question to Randy, put the mirror back up?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, and is that going to go, I guess that'll go in front of the fence line? Is that what the
It'll
plan is?
be attached to the fence.
Oh, it's going to be attached to the fence.
Is there any space in between the fence and the curb?
There's a little bit, but not much.
We'll have to look at it.
Okay,
We'll get
because,
it in there.
okay, because if that's the case, because the fence probably will be when to go up? It'll be a while. If it's
It'll
still
be within a month.
Okay, within a month,
Probably.
okay. Because I know I've had a lot of people call me about how perilous it has become trying to turn left off of a ridge onto Kenilworth without the mirror, because you just can't see.
Or you can't see.
You can't see down
Right.
the hill, yeah. So,
You have the mirror, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so, I mean, I don't know, maybe we can come up with a temporary solution until we can figure out whether we're gonna have room for it or however we're gonna do it.
I'll
All
take
right.
a look at it tomorrow and see if we can do something temporary.
Okay, that'd be great, Randy. Thank you so much. Hey, okay. Now, okay, so that one, 020225, we're going to carry that over, keep it on the agenda for the finale of that project. Hi, guys. Okay, now I'm going to skip down. Sorry, I'm doing a little jumping around tonight. I'm going to jump down to item from the old business agenda 070425, which is request for consideration to add a street light at 1455 in that area. Overlook Road, coming to us from myself and Randy Hambley. And actually, originally, item coming to us from Claire and Merrill, who are residents on Overlook. And Merrill came to me with this idea, left me a fantastic voicemail message. And I'm going to let them say why the need for the light, and then we can talk about it.
I want a street light on our street because if I stay at a friend's house late, like 6 o'clock, sometimes it'll be dark, and like I walk home, and it's really dark.
A little scary.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and there is a light down at the bottom of
Yeah.
Overlook at the intersection of Overlook and Melrose. It's back the other way, Brian. Sorry. Down on the other end of the hill. Yeah, down there. And it had gotten way overgrown by privet and vines and such. And we did clear that off, which is great. But when you come up further up Overlook and their house is over here on the side, there's really not any light up there. So talking about adding a light a little bit further up closer to their house so that it will be a little bit safer for Merrill and anybody who's walking on the street. When I was out there looking, there was neighbors walking their dogs and things. So I think and Randy said that we have a place for it and a need for it. So Randy has the price, and we would be setting a new pole, correct?
Right.
Okay, we'd be setting a new pole, and do we know exactly like where that would be?
It would be in close proximity to that cell tower pole that out in front of 1455.
Yeah, okay, Brian, can you go
Thank you.
back up the street where you
Yeah.
were before? Sorry, I keep jumping you all over the place too. You can see it back there in the background. That pole, as it exists now, is, yeah, it's like a cable or a,
Yeah, I
Whatever.
believe it's like a cell tower or
Yeah.
something on it, but it's not owned by Alabama Power, so they would have to set
a new pole. And I assume there's another pole over there that's kind of a little bit further, well, over there. Is that that's a telephone, I guess, and they probably can't do that either. They have to put their lights on their poles,
On
right?
their poles,
Yeah,
right.
okay. So that is the case. We're gonna be setting a new pole, and the cost of, adding,
Just ask a question.
oh, sure, certainly.
I don't know the answer to it. Is there any way we could just get them to replace that pole?
I mentioned using that pole to put the light on, and they said they did not own it, that I think Verizon owns it. So,
So it's not Alabama Power.
no.
No, it's not their pole at all. If it was their pole, that we could go ahead and put the light on.
That's what I was hoping was that they might just put a new pole there, that, so it would be
Sorry.
one instead of two, but.
Yeah, but I think whoever owns that pole,
Now Verizon did put calls to, run underground power to their poles. So
Thank
Alabama
you.
Power is gonna be able to branch off of that and get the other poles, so that saved a lot.
yeah, I wish we could get rid of the other pole altogether, but there we are. So the cost, the annual cost of the new light will be $161.28, coming out of our street light, line item, and, that is the request. Do I have any questions from anybody, or for Meryl or Claire? Okay.
I'd make a motion.
All right, make a motion to approve from Mr. Gwaltney and a second from Mr. Brandt, I think that was. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now we are 4-0 because Mr. Harden has joined us. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
So we will be, this is also going to be in public safety. Y'all do not have to stay.
Okay.
But thank y'all for coming, and Meryl, you did a great job. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Meryl.
Good job, buddy.
All right, thank y'all. Have a good night. Okay, now we're going to jump again. Mr. Harden has joined us, and we are going to jump to the bottom of the new business agenda, to item number 440425, request for consultation for Creekside Infrastructure Development, coming to us from our mayor, Mr. Wyatt. And I am going to, at this point, say, first of all, I know we have some folks here, and we have folks from Sanford and Landmark, and then we also have some residents who are here. I'm going to be turning the meeting over to Mr. Gwaltney because I actually have a conflict on this item. Local lawyers who are working with Landmark Development and Sanford are partners in my husband's law firm. So I'm going to have to step aside from this item. Mr. Gwaltney is going to lead the discussion of this tonight. And yeah, it's all yours.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. So just a couple of housekeeping items. I wanted, since a lot of folks probably haven't been here before. So we'll have I assume we'll have a presentation. You'll run through the details that they asked, and then we'll open up the item for commentary from council, from others that want to provide input. The one thing I would say is, because we have a pretty healthy agenda this evening, if you have, if you hear the same comment made repeatedly, we want everyone to feel like they're heard for sure. So if you have something, feel free to stand up and, add it to the discussion. But if it's been repeated quite a few times, just be mindful of that so we can address the items and get the other folks that are waiting back to their families before it gets too late. But there will also be, just for scheduling purposes, we'll also have another meeting in Planning and Development on May 19th to discuss this item. That meeting will start at 5 p.m. And then additionally, another opportunity for commentary will be when these items are before the full council on June 9th at 6 p.m. And that will be in the room next door. So there's lots of opportunities to provide feedback. We want everyone to feel like they're being heard. So you guys are ready to go? Let's do it.
Can we plug in just directly for a presentation?
Probably go talk to Brian.
Yeah.
Is this the same one that you're using for planning commission?
Yeah, I can airdrop it too, but,
Is that it?
oh, no, no.
No, here, just, try to see. Plug that in.
All set?
Oh, absolutely. Happy.
Great.
Feel free. Sorry. Realize you're waiting on me.
Well, I'm Bob Dunn with Landmark Development. I'll just quickly make mention of some of those that are here with me. Dr. Colin Coyne, who I believe everyone probably knows, with Stanford University. Lynette Crandall, Stuart Zadra, Jeff Polishek with Stanford University, Elizabeth Brightlow, David Davis are all part of the Stanford Horizons team. Appreciate the time tonight. We wanted to touch on sort of two main topic areas as we go through the discussion, and certainly happy to answer any questions that you have. I believe we circulated or handed out a letter or a memo that we've drafted that we want to share with the city. The purpose of that document really is to try and frame the whole thought behind the Stanford Horizons and Creekside development in terms of really what we believe are the underpinnings of how this impacts quality of life in Homewood. That's really the purpose of that document, just to try and succinctly capture the breadth of that argument. That's come together over a period of months. One of the things that I think is important to acknowledge is when you have an institution in higher education as your partner, community engagement is sort of in their DNA. This process that we've tried to organize has been very much focused on having an open, transparent discussion and dialogue within the community. No matter how you start the process, right, when you first put an idea on the table, it generates a lot of reaction, and that's certainly been the case with this opportunity, really like any project that we see. But I think it's important to note that we've been very committed to, and we will continue to carry this process of community engagement. One of the things that we've done is to organize what we call the Development Advisory Group. It's a group of about 18 people. Some of them are here tonight. What I want to mention there is this is not a group that we put together of endorsers of the project. This is a group of objective, respected, well-known minds who all represent different viewpoints on this project. That's one way in which we've tried to build this approach to community engagement, to get people at the table with us to start to think through, vet these ideas, and help us shape a plan that I think can be a better plan. I'm not saying that's the extent of community engagement. We've hosted listening sessions, we've hosted public presentations, we've done a lot of different things to gain community feedback and community input. And I think that process is proving that it works. One of the things that we've seen and learned as we've gone through that was, everything we're studying, we're trying to find ways to add to the community, to bring benefit to the community. There's no question that with Creekside East, there was going to be negative consequences by putting certain facilities in the Creekside East location, track, soccer. No matter how we went about it, we studied different ways to restore, rebuild, relocate, habitat. No matter what alternative we looked at, there were going to be negative consequences. And we simply stepped back, and with a lot of good feedback and input, we said, we've got to find a better way. How can we find a better way to solve that aspect of the project? And that really was the outcome of community engagement. And so I think the process is proving to work. We're going to continue this process well on down the line. We put the DAG together because we think it can be a very effective means of helping us work through the information. And then beyond the DAG, we'll continue to do outreach and to gain broader community input as we go. So just wanted to share that with you. The point of the memo that you have in front of you is really fourfold. I think this is the best way that we can harness what the real opportunity is with the Stanford Horizons and Creekside development. I think it best fits into these four categories. Number one, we see opportunity where it can really strengthen the quality of education in Homewood at the K-12 level and on up to the Stanford University level. We don't talk a lot about it, but I think it's important to underscore that higher education is going through very significant transformation and change. Universities are facing challenges they've not seen before. To address that, we created the idea of Stanford Horizons as Stanford University's way to respond to the dynamics in the market and strengthen their future as, if not the largest private employer in Homewood, certainly one of the largest employers, but more importantly, using the investment that it will take to drive forward Sanford Horizons to have benefit well beyond the confines of campus. So point one, and we'll get into this in a little bit more detail, how this can be used as a lever to strengthen the quality of education in all respects in Homewood. Number two, defining and building civic assets. We'll talk about what that means. Again, the opportunity here to do things that can improve access and education around the watershed. Safety and security, building a bridge over Lakeshore Drive. Building recreational facilities that can be additive to the community, not taking away from the community. Those types of things can be outcomes from this type of economic development plan. Environmental stewardship, we've learned a lot in this respect and really believe that this project can be really a showpiece to demonstrate how community can come together, promote land development in harmony with the watershed and natural habitat and the environment overall, and really use this as a proving point of better ways to address development in harmony with the watershed and beyond. And then community investment is really what we're going to talk about today. We've done a tremendous amount of work around this. We've been at it quite a while, and I have to say we've been really impressed with and pleased with the level of fiscal impact that this project can generate for the city and for Homewood schools. Frankly, well beyond what we initially thought it might generate in terms of new tax revenues to the city and the school district. So that's kind of the primary thrust of tonight's discussion. Just in general terms, you know, what is the community investment program? How do we think of this? Number one, we kind of harness this around the idea of civic anchored economic development. Our company for 30 years, this is pretty much all that we've done. Creating economic development programs around civic anchors. For us, civic anchors mean higher institutions in higher education, healthcare, sports and entertainment, and more recently, meaning the last 5 to 10 years, we would say transit. If you look at the pattern of growth in cities, the greatest opportunity to grow tax base and to grow a city is around these civic anchors. So that's kind of at the foundation of this idea. It's about using economic development and private investment to improve the quality of life factors for Homewood and for Sanford University. Can't deny the fact that I come from Madison, Wisconsin, one of the great college towns in America. Consistently, when you look at the studies that are done there, when a decision is made to recruit a student or a faculty, it's almost equally weighted in what we see in some of the research that is done there between picking a school and picking a city where that school is located. And that's part of the opportunity that we see here. Really what you're going to see through the balance of this presentation is this is all about leveraging private investment in a way that will generate significant new incremental tax base. We've worked in a lot of really distressed cities, and that's a different conversation around a table like this. That is not your situation, and you're fortunate that it's not. But regardless of that, I don't think we've engaged with a city or a state for a very long time where they were not facing just massive challenges to meet capital and operating budgets. And those trends don't seem to have any path to subside as we look to the future. And so finding new and innovative ways to leverage private investment to grow tax base is sort of become economic development 101. And that's the framework of what we call the CIP. Our consultant team, we've hired 2 consultants, AECOM, who we do a lot of this work with. If they're not the leader in the industry, they're certainly neck and neck with whoever would be. The analysis that you're going to see, we fully developed with AECOM. And then we thought, frankly, the numbers are big. They're impressive. So we went to PFM as well, and we said, all right, let's create a secondary set of economic models to make sure that the numbers that we're seeing hold up when we put them through another lens and another test. So that's the team that we've brought together. Go back a slide if you would. And again, if we brought Chris Brewer from AECom here, he would stress over and over and over again that the best opportunity for cities to drive economic development ties to the civic anchors of a community. The return, the payback, the tax generation goes way beyond other forms of economic development that we see all over the country these days. I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly. I don't want to sit here and we've shared this information with you. I don't want to sit here and read off 30 bullet points on every page, but I'll try and hit the highlights. You know, why is a program like our CIP important to a city? What I just said. The budgetary pressures cities are facing are growing at almost an exponential pace. Cities like Homewood have a certain set of challenges because you don't have the natural ability to grow at your periphery. That's a good and bad thing. The most expensive way to grow a city is at the periphery, by far. The opportunity we have here is really an infill development opportunity, working off existing infrastructure largely, capitalizing on a civic anchor. And one of the things that's been impressive to us when we measure the return on this type of thing, it's at the very high end of what we see with these types of projects, and it's dominantly because it's an infill development tied together with a civic anchor that has to invest significant private capital to grow. And so those are, like, if you could pull levers on economic development, you kind of have the opportunity here to pull all the right levers, including Homewood's just an incredibly strong community. The market demand here is very strong. Rent levels will be high. I mean, you've got all the positive factors working for you. As I said, oftentimes we launch these efforts and we're trying to climb out of a deep, deep hole. And that just introduces a set of challenges that you're fortunate not to have here. There's other factors that just make attracting private investment to a community very challenging today, the capital markets and what have you. One of the things that we're learning about, I'm not going to suggest to you that we're experts on it yet, but the lid, from what we can tell, is a real impediment to growing your tax base to support capital investment and maintaining the high quality schools that you have. That's just it's one of those roadblocks, if you will, that we think this program can help overcome. And the last point here is simply, if not this, then what? I'm not trying to suggest that the city of Homewood has to do anything, but as time goes on and the realities of budgets and what have you become more and more real, it would seem to us and to our whole team that this is an opportunity that we really only ask. Let's give it full consideration. As we gave you in the letter, let's get all the issues on the table where we think there's merit in this and judge it in its entirety, rather than taking an issue and an issue and an issue one at a time. So in the alternative, absent a program like this, in most cities what you're left with is raising taxes on homeowners and on businesses, and no one wants to have their taxes raised. How can a successful CIP program be established? Number one, the measurables are what this presentation is all about, and we think there's a very strong, sort of an overwhelming body of evidence that supports the fiscal model that's been established here. It starts with there's nearly $1 billion of investment over time in what we see as the Sanford Horizons development plan. That's just an enormous number, but the costs have risen so rapidly. Anything that we talk about today that used to be $400 million is now approaching $1 billion. I mean, the costs are just beyond reason, beyond imagination. But that level of investment is what stands behind Sanford Horizons. What's important to think about as we have this discussion is, I think fair to say, new to the city of Homewood, this is a multi-phased master plan mixed-use development, meaning there's a certain civic infrastructure that has to be built that enables any building we talk about to be built. I would compare it almost to an industrial park. Cities all over the country build industrial parks. They lay the roads, the sewer, the water, the stormwater, the lighting, the signage, the landscaping, to entice businesses to want to come in and take a lot and build a vertical building on that lot. This is somewhat like that. I don't think there are too many instances where, and you've got some new zoning text that contemplates this type of development, where you've had this type of multi-year, long-term, multi-phase development. And it causes us to think about the project in an entirely different way. In a certain respect, we're trying to predict the future. What are the different programmatic elements that could make up this project in terms of different types of buildings and uses in the market for those? But more importantly, what is this civic infrastructure that we have to build that will make this development possible? We can't just start building it today. There's certain elements of infrastructure that have to be built. Typically, that infrastructure would be built by and funded by a city. Not always, but in most instances, that's how this type of infrastructure is built, to entice businesses to want to come and build on those sites. In this case, what we're saying is, through the CIP, shift that burden to the private sector. That's the underlying premise of this. What jumps out at us is if you took an example where a city would build infrastructure, in most cases, what the economists tell us is a city would be targeting a 1-to-1, 2-to-1 return, meaning tax revenues generated to pay back that investment. In this case, we're seeing it much higher than that, 7-to-1, 8-to-1. And the reason for that is what I said a minute ago. It's infill development driven by private investment with a significant civic anchor as propelling that growth and meeting a lot of the urban lifestyle characteristics that we know do things to strengthen property values, grow rents, grow room rates on hotels, things like that. So that's why I said earlier, you've kind of got all the perfect levers to pull. And when you have those, you tend to see these return metrics for this type of program to be considerably higher. I mean, you're at the upper end of that range, and that's a positive. What does this analysis tell us? Really, you'll see a slide in just a minute here. We've broken down what the fiscal tax base gain estimates are to City of Homewood, Homewood Schools, Jefferson County, and the state of Alabama. This model, these models are it's called the in-plan model. These are used consistently in these kinds of efforts, cities small and large across the country, and it leads us to this next slide, which is really the analytical framework here. And this is the best way we could think of to represent what the CIP is really all about. What you see here is a forecast over 40 years. Why 40 years? Two reasons. And we do a lot of these types of studies. And we always sort of come back to this. Reason number one, if you think about making improvements to things like schools and what have you, by the time something like this would get moving and schools get built and what have you, typically a municipality would finance that over 25, 30, sometimes 35 years. And so hence 40 years. The other sort of bookend is the IRS tells us what the useful life of an asset is, and that's a good metric to use for this type of analysis. So I don't want to get overly technical with this. These are subjects that probably aren't resonating that interesting in the broad scheme of things, but here's the punchline. Over this time horizon, the forecasts that two economists are giving us, broken down by different streams of tax revenues, sales, property income, and then a series of other tax revenues, fees that cities derive, be as high as $400 million or more over the planning horizon to the city of Homewood. Homewood City Schools, $255 million of new tax revenues over this planning horizon. Jefferson County, 181, countywide schools, 71 million. And the state of Alabama derives the greatest return, generally, as you can see, because of the additive element is income tax, which local government doesn't share in the income tax. So, as I said, we do a lot of this type of analysis. And this is really what impressed us as we started to get into the economic modeling, and this is what took us, frankly, to then hire PFM to give ourselves a checkpoint against the numbers that we were initially seeing from AECOM. So we call that the build scenario. You know, what are the benefits? What are the community-wide benefits of a program like this? Simplest way that we can articulate it is the build scenario driven by private investment in infrastructure and then vertical development generates a very significant tax-based growth for the city of Homewood and Homewood schools. You'll hear me say this over and over and over again, but it's the point that really jumped off the page at us. If we don't build, you know, it's idle land today, it doesn't generate tax base, it's idle land tomorrow that doesn't generate tax base. You can easily say, you know, you can have 100% of something, but 100% of zero is still zero. And so somewhere in this economic model is reality. Frankly, we drove these numbers back, not forward. I could stand here and spend the next hour and share all kinds of additional measurables that the economists would tell us have the potential to drive these numbers up. But they're plenty big already. And this truly was what was impressive to us as we started to build this model. What are the other community-wide benefits that we see? We've begun to explore the idea of recreational sports athletic facilities. Part of that was driven by the interest in backing off of building those facilities in Creekside East. I want to be absolutely clear on this to avoid or eliminate confusion. In no way are we trying to propose, you know, a solution by moving these to the city facilities to the west of the site. We'd like to explore alternatives where if we're going to build sports and recreational facilities as part of Sanford Horizons, how can that be done in a way that would have added community benefit? Not taking any facilities away, not disrupting things due to construction, not creating confusion in the community in any way, but we'd like to start to explore what are the different alternatives of where we could invest those dollars that would only be additive to the community. That's the underlying purpose here. And we think they're significant. I mean, it's not just sports and rec. Building a bridge over Lakeshore Drive and creating a more safe environment, not just for students back and forth, but for families that live north of Lakeshore Drive, who in time will come down here on a daily basis, not putting people at risk dodging traffic, creating perhaps a boardwalk down to the Creekside, creating the type of retail dining, entertainment environment that we can prove over and over and over again. You don't have to go any further than down the street or to Edgewood to understand the value that people put on that type of environment in their community. It's what draws people to want to live here. It's what draws businesses to want to locate here. One of the interesting things that I'll share with you is it's very early in the maturity of this project. We have already been approached by a number of prospective tenants. We've done a tremendous amount of market research. Overwhelmingly, what we hear, and I mean overwhelmingly what we hear, is the desire to locate in an environment like this that's pedestrian-oriented, mixed use, that has the type of amenities, lifestyle amenities, we overuse this term, seems like every day, but overwhelmingly what we hear from businesses and others is the desire to locate in an environment like this. We wouldn't normally start a marketing effort at this stage of a project when we don't even yet have a project. These are people that have reached out to us. Last couple of points, sorry. We're almost done. The bridge, strengthening Sanford's competitive position. Any city, you know, would fight to keep a major employer today. And in no way am I suggesting Sanford's going anywhere or their future's not bright. I want to try and be as clear as we can be when we make these points. But Sanford is facing dynamics in higher education they've never faced before. And it's not unique to Sanford. I mean, Colin, fair to say, higher education, the winds of change are gusting.
In the last 22 months, one university or college has closed every month.
One a month.
On average.
And what's critical here is building the type of lifestyle environment to attract students, faculty, staff, supporters of the university long term. A strong Sanford makes for a stronger Homewood. A strong Homewood makes for a stronger Sanford. That's kind of as basic a point as I can make. And then the last bullet here, I mean, these are just these are the primary benefits that we would argue when you look at this in its entirety, not on a, on a single subject by single subject by single subject, but when you look at this in its entirety, this is what we feel the community benefits can be from this program. Lastly, $1 billion, almost of private investment, 900 construction jobs, 2,800 permanent jobs across the whole spectrum of industries. Some of that's Sanford's growth, some of that is growth that will come from the potential development. When you ask what is civic infrastructure, I won't go through the list, but again, these are things that are the building blocks of a plan like this. I'll explain this again in a minute, but think of it as the horizontal plan. All the things that we have to do, stormwater management, improving stormwater quality, doing things to open up awareness and education with Creekside East and Creekside West. Streets, sewer, water, lighting, parking, signage, the pedestrian bridge, potentially recreational facilities. That's what we mean when we say civic infrastructure. Right? It's like building a city. We have to lay that template to then be able to do the vertical development that will follow. And it's the vertical development that generates tax base, and it's the vertical development that generates a return to us to justify funding this privately. So it's a laundry list that could go well beyond that. So last couple of points. What is the structure of the CIP? We've been at this quite a while. We've tried to study things that have been done in Homewood and, of course, things that are done throughout Alabama, and beyond that, we've got a lot of examples. I mean, this is all that we do, so we've got a lot of examples that we're very familiar with. But this is the most succinct way that we can summarize this. And I would say at this point, these are ideas. This is a proposal to the city. This is something that we think we can demonstrate has real merit, but this is something that we have to organize together. So the point is, the civic infrastructure that would be built would normally be the responsibility of a sponsoring municipality. We're saying we'll take the responsibility to build it and finance it. That list that you saw, we estimate, has a cost over time of about $104 million. You don't build a nearly $1 billion project without spending significant money on infrastructure. In this case, we think it's around about $104 million. Third point is that risk is being shifted to the private sector. And this is becoming more and more common. We're not standing here, saying we're doing something miraculous. I mean, this is just where economic development is taking us these days. The next point is, what is it that we're proposing of the city? We would like to have the ability to do what we call value capture. Recover a portion of the tax base that we generate, lodging, sales, and property tax, and use that as a component of the civic infrastructure over time. It's not a risk to the city. It's not an investment by the city. These are dollars that are only created if we do the development. If we do no development, those tax dollars are not there. We're not suggesting what is most often the case, which is use existing city dollars on your existing city budget and use those dollars to build infrastructure. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is the increment that private investment generates, we'd like to use a portion of that over a period of time, not Homewood City School property taxes, right? Those kick in day one, but the portion that comes to the city. That's the underlying proposal. We call that a value capture. Basically what we're suggesting is of that $104 million over time, 20 years, that would cover about 20 to 25%, 23 to 27% of the total cost of that civic infrastructure. When you measure it against the total fiscal return to the city, it's a much smaller percentage, if that makes sense. Right? That graph that I showed you, that 12% is calculated on that full graph, not the 23% is $24 million of a $100 million investment. So time factors in here. It's like you mortgage your house, right? If you buy a $400,000 home, and you buy a $400,000 home. If you add up the cost to amortize it over 25 years, it looks like a much different number. And again, just the last point is, one of the questions you'll see at the end is, what's the risk to the city? If the taxes aren't there, it's our risk, 100%. I don't want to overlook that point. It's a point that oftentimes is overlooked. But if for whatever reason these forecasts are wrong, we've invested $100 million in the ground, and it's our responsibility to cover that cost, not the city's. We're relying on our own forecasts of tax revenue. We're not asking the city to take a risk with us. Last couple of slides, this graphic just sort of demonstrates normally what would be done. Traditional infrastructure investment is municipally financed. Here we'll put that burden on the private sector, and we hope to convince you that it's a worthwhile consideration to structure this in this way, where we recover a portion of those taxes that we generate. Last slide, I believe. What are the risks to the city of Homewood? When the private sector is taking the risk to build it and finance it, and the build risk today is real. These numbers that we see in construction change almost daily. There's a considerable risk in taking on the responsibility to build this. You have a public works department, you build things day after day after day. I mean, it's fair to say the risks of costs are like we've probably never seen them before. It is very unpredictable. And the cost of financing, no different. The interest rate cycle is a guessing game now, but we're prepared to shoulder that risk. The CIP is structured as a value capture mechanism. As I said, these revenues are only generated through the private investment that we build vertically. You know, I've heard the term, this is an incentive program. There's a point of distinction that I want to make to that. Normally, and we do a lot of this, you know, incentive programs where municipal dollars go into a project. We've done a tremendous amount of that, and there's reasons why you do that. I would not characterize this as an incentive program. I would characterize it more as an investment program because of the fact of what I said. This is money going into infrastructure. This is not money going into an asset from which someone derives a return on investment. But it's not an incentive into a vertical building. It's money that's going into building infrastructure that does enable the opportunity to build the vertical development. So you may consider that a subtle distinction. We think it's a very meaningful distinction. Last couple of points. Don't believe that there's real economic risk to the city. The risk of the CIP is really borne by the private sector. And last point would simply be the real risk, we would argue, is the opportunity cost of not taking advantage of these levers that you can uniquely pull in partnership with Sanford, where there's a need and a willingness and a desire to make major investment in the community, but to do it in a way that the benefits of that extend well beyond the four walls of Sanford University. As I said, we've done a lot of this type of work over the years. Those types of partnerships are hard to find. No one's looking for a pat on the back. We're just saying, let's work together and try and find every advantage and every opportunity that can come from this type of investment, and ultimately do the types of things that really are known to add to the quality of life and the value of Homewood for residents, businesses, Sanford, visitors, you know, everyone that calls the city of Homewood their home. So we'll end it there. Happy to answer any questions. Hopefully that was somewhat instructive, not too far down in the weeds.
No, it was good. Thank you for taking the time to go through it. A couple of things so we've got lots of folks in the room, but we also have folks online because the meeting is streamed. Can you detail, just for people that may not be aware and haven't been to any of the community engagement meetings, what the project looks like? What's going to occur on Creekside West and what will occur on Creekside East?
Sure. Let me start with Creekside East. That's maybe a little bit easier to explain. When we first laid out the plan for Creekside East, there's a series of ideas that we've had about how to really improve access to and awareness and education about the watershed. That was sort of the first thought that we had there. I mean, it's an incredible natural habitat, and how, with a partner in higher education, with their biologists and scientists and others, how can we really use this as a showpiece, and hence the name, the Creekside District. In addition to that, there are currently sports and rec fields there now for intramural. those will stay. There's some parking on site, what have you. Of course, we know that it's where the salamanders reside for a good part of the year. That will not change. We had also looked at the idea of moving the track and soccer complex. I stopped short of calling it a stadium because stadium creates this connotation of a big structure and what have you. It's really a track and soccer complex. We had looked at different ways to locate that Creekside East. We're no longer proposing that because of what we've discovered through the community engagement efforts. We've taken that part off the table, but we want to maintain sort of the foundational elements that really are about making that kind of a hallmark of the overall development as it relates to the watershed and opportunities that we have there for education. Creekside West. The plan for Creekside West, and I don't have the exact program parked in the back of my mind, but I think I can get it pretty close. About 125,000 square feet of lifestyle retail. And when I say lifestyle retail, it's the type of retail that will complement downtown, Edgewood, other parts of the community. It's additive, but it's the type of retail that we know is what attracts people to a city like Homewood. And there are endless examples that we can point to. That's the first part of it. There's a proposed hotel that we have in the current development plan. We've had a fair amount of feedback on the hotel, its height. Can't say we've had much feedback other than the height. We're working on some things there to address height. We're proposing what we term Sanford affiliate or Sanford related housing. That's not intended to be student housing. That's intended to be, there will be graduate students, law students, but faculty, professors, those that have a true affiliation with Sanford and senior housing and owner-occupied housing. That's the concept of Sanford affiliate housing, and if I remember right, I think the approved development plan would include about 435 units of Sanford affiliate housing. There's a certain amount of commercial office that's around 100,000 square feet, likely to be structured parking. I think that's the breadth of the program as best as I can describe it. From that, there will be a series of infrastructure elements like, we hope to be able to make the bridge across Lakeshore Drive work. So hopefully that gives you just a general concept of what West and East really are intending in terms of the development plan.
I did think so. Thank you for that clarification. One additional item that I noted before we get into the discussion and commentary. So on one slide, you had 23% for the incentive ask of the 104 million, and then you had a range of 24 to 28% on another slide. So that we can have a clear delineation of what we're considering, what is the 23% that you're asking for, or do you want us to decide a range or something in that range for you?
Yeah, that's something we should work out. We're just trying to give you the presentation of the numbers. It's in the mid 20% range is what we estimate the value capture would contribute toward the cost of the civic infrastructure. When we use that 12% number, we're just saying that's representative of the total tax base gain to the city. So hopefully that makes sense.
And you're saying that over a 20-year period?
Right.
Okay, so those were all the just housekeeping questions I had. All right, we'll open it up to commentary from the committee first and council members that may have questions, concerns, praises.
Again, you want us to consider the big picture, not focus on individual problems or could be problems that we all die by slow individual cuts in life, right?
Yes, we do.
So the big plan that was suggested, proposed to move the existing soccer field and track of Sanford to the city-owned land where the soccer club is currently located. I don't see that as a feasible option whatsoever. I mean, there's nowhere to build other facilities in that spot, and there's nowhere to build them in Homewood, or we would have done it 20 years ago as a city. So that's an issue. Another issue is by not defining the student housing as dorms or whatever, it opens up the apartment dwellers in, as a city, us be able to, I don't know the correct verbiage, I don't want to be political. When it becomes apartments, it becomes difficult for us to have any control who lives there, okay? And from a school standpoint, I don't know if anybody's here on that behalf, Homewood's the largest 6A school, us in Mount Brook, teeter-totter. We have no desire to be a 7A school. So that's why there's always been somewhat of a, we don't want any more residential, okay? We don't need it. We don't want it. We don't want to be 7A, okay? Thirdly, I mean, I'm going through the bullet points. The tax ask is, I understand 40 years. I won't be here in 40 years. I'm 55. So 20 years, hopefully I will be, hobbling around, hopefully up down the park. But Sanford has been and is a good neighbor. I think we're teetering as not so good a neighbor. This is the big ask. This is the largest potential construction. I'm stealing this from somebody that's that led me to this information, but that'd be the biggest construction in Jefferson County since Wildwood. This is a huge project, and it's just a lot. Which, you know, I mean, and y'all are good in what you do. Your industry, your company is very well thought of. It's nothing. I'm just saying, this is a lot, a whole lot to be absorbed. And some of the proposals I just don't think are realistic. I think it's a good idea. I think it could be brought down a little bit. I do think Sanford, I have kids that go to college. Sanford have more dorms, more retail, something for the kids to do or the community to go visit is a great idea. A 15-story hotel there, you know, the Vestavia people are upset about it. I'm not a Vestavia person, but I mean, I get where they're coming from. I mean, I like the vision, I really do. I mean, of going forward but it's just a lot, man. I mean, it is a lot, and not having anywhere. We're fine. Homewood, I guess what I'm getting at, Homewood's fine without this. We are Homewood with it. Like you said, people are coming to us because we don't need this. Yes, tax revenue and costs of running the city are increasing, and we are limited with the lid, the cap, property tax. I understand that. That's why we have to be better city councilors or stewards of our tax dollars, and we're looking at other ways to raise revenue as well. I don't want to totally say no about the idea. I get. I think the idea is there on a much more university-specific scale, if that makes sense. I don't know. You and I have never talked before, but
yeah.
Until today. I just don't see the ability to relocate our soccer fields anywhere, and definitely there is not enough room to rebuild them where they are with the new track and the Sanford's stuff moving over there. It's not realistic. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but that stuff floods twice a year. Homewood baseball field with Sanford owns floods every freaking year. So it's a lot. That's all I have to say. I don't. The tax, the ask, the abatements is one thing. I'm just going through my mind again. The apartments, being apartments and not truly student housing, is an issue on student size, increasing traffic in our schools, hiring more teachers. I see our firemen over there. Who's going to handle the fire? You know, making calls to a hotel or to the student housing. Police, is it going to be Sanford Police? Is it going to be Homewood Police? I mean, these are all, like I said, these are all things, the day-to-day stuff that we don't think about. These are beautiful presentations and drawings, and I get it. I get the economic growth, but I just have a lot of concerns, as you can well tell. So,
yeah, you know, I got to be honest. I wouldn't really expect your viewpoint to be, dramatically different than that. I mean, is it a big project? Yeah, it's a big project by Homewood standards. I mean, I don't think, I may be wrong, but other than on campus, I don't think Homewood certainly has not had many of these sort of multi-phase developments. And so it brings all these issues out that when you do this on a building by building by building by building basis, you don't deal with it. You don't think of infrastructure holistically. You don't think about, you know, what's the true impact to the watershed of this one building. When you look at it as part of a broader development, well, then you have to think of it more holistically. So are there a lot of issues? There are. I'm not in any way trying to.
I'm thinking about, and I don't mean to talk over you, I'm just, going through my mind here, I'm sure traffic studies can be done, those are worth, whoever you pay to do the study, what they want you to tell them, but we got a lot of work going in with the interstate and the lakeshore triangle. There's just a lot of construction that's gonna be going on lakeshore in the very near future. And it just, I have some real hesitations about a project like this going on right now. I'm just trying to think of some other stuff. Say the parking, the tax revenue, Sanford's tax exempt, right? Pretty much. On the property tax stuff.
The university is, but this is private development.
Okay, so
on land that is currently owned by, so to be clear on that, this is not property tax exempt. This is property tax as private.
And I'm glad you did clarify that, because that has been a question asked. I know the residential owned properties by Sanford are tax exempt, which is a whole different issue.
Yeah, this is private development.
Okay.
Would be taxed, property taxed. And I heard a lot of questions there. I could try and answer them.
Yeah.
Number one, it's a large project.
Yeah.
Number two, with respect to the park and recs facilities, sports facilities, we've been looking at different ways to address that. What's there now, we know and understand well, and it's a great facility. What's on campus? There's some great facilities there. We're looking at making some improvements there. As we began to look at it, is there a way to reposition some of that? We think there are some alternatives that bear consideration. One could be the city soccer complex to the west, but only if you maintain the fields that are there now and you can make improvements there that would only be good for the soccer community. In no way are we suggesting that we're going to go drop something there that's going to take fields away or what have you. And the fact is, we haven't done the work to prove that out. We've built a lot of stadiums. This is kind of our bread and butter. The issue that we see there that could come into play is, no matter where we do this, can we do it in a way that you can share facilities that are built that can have a benefit for the community? If the answer is no, you can't share any facilities. That totally defies where this industry is going right now, because these athletic facilities have become so expensive to build and to operate. Everybody's trying to find ways that they can better utilize these facilities and have broader community benefit. If it can't be done there, understood, we got to find other alternatives. But the only discussion we should have is, if it's beneficial to soccer, should we explore those opportunities? If it's not, then we should. I don't think it's the only alternative. It could be a good alternative, but it's got to add to the soccer, base of the community, not detract from it. And we think there's some ideas that are worth considering. No more, no less. The housing, we've worked really hard on this and really appreciate the city's perspective on housing. Sanford, is a true civic anchor. Sanford's been around, will be around for the next 100 years. Not interested in a resident, big resident base on campus now. It's a resident-based campus. Can't house those students all on campus. Many of those students are paying property tax and sales tax outside the city of Homewood, and we have a residency requirement on campus. Want to bring that population back on campus and create a complementary Sanford affiliate housing environment, frankly, that will help us pay for infrastructure, really strengthen the quality and character of the residential that can be there, and be an additive to the community, not a cost to the community. Don't really view this as being an environment where you're going to have a high concentration of families there and kids and in schools and what have you. That's why we say owner-occupied, senior, Sanford affiliate. When you break those down, believe those are very manageable segments of housing that would be additive to the city of Homewood, not a negative. I think that was most of your questions. I'm not sure I hit them all. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment that, you know, we are representatives of our city. You know, we were elected to serve our citizens, and we have heard from a lot of citizens. There, you know when an item has struck nerve, and this has struck a nerve. And there are a lot of doubts out there. I know there are a lot of people who have attended the community meetings, and they have gathered the information and formulated their thoughts and shared them with us. So it is we got a long way to go. I mean, I agree with Jody, the concept of, you know, the pedestrian bridge, the concept of kids going back and forth, but like Jody said, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of scale. You know, I mentioned in the planning commission meeting, you know, the hotel. In my opinion, you know, the hotel's too tall, and from what I hear from my constituents, they don't want a hotel there at all, being so close to the high school. So I'm just sharing with you, we have heard on a daily basis, since this has been in the public domain, from our constituents. So I just wanted to share that with you. I think it's too much for Homewood. I think it's too much. From what we've heard, and like I said, there's a meter, you know what I mean? Like, we know, like, when we hit a certain point, and we have hit, you know, that point that we are hearing from people on a very regular basis. People are tuned in, they're paying attention. This is not, you know, people are speaking directly to the issues, and you heard them, you know, at the planning commission, and I think we are still, the need is still there to address these issues and meet these folks where they are, our citizens where they are, because I think it's too much for Homewood at this point. I do.
Thank you, Councilor Andrus. Councilor Sims?
Yes, Councilor Gwaldney, thank you. I just had a couple questions. Thank you for the presentation. It's very helpful in understanding, you know, your plan and approach. Also, just one of my favorite news stories right now is Sanford accepting in the Birmingham Southern students from last year who are graduating right now. So grateful for the university's partnership with our community, both within Homewood and, you know, at large. Question about this. I know you've mentioned the Park and Rec property a couple of times. I don't want to belabor this point too much because it has been referenced, but there was a news conference last Monday where it was mentioned specifically. That continues to circulate in the press about that property being utilized for the development. Councilor Andrus referenced a lot of questions that we're getting from the community. There's been a lot around that specifically that we've been answering. And you've mentioned that, you know, we don't want to create confusion. So is it possible to go on in some public way and retract, you know, what possibly is circulating out there about use of that property? That's just kind of the first question. Or are you in conversation with somebody right now to use that property in in an advanced manner?
Well, let me be as clear as I can be on this point.
Yeah.
When we first spoke about this, we tried to be very clear that we're looking at alternatives and beginning to study ideas where we could solve the track soccer complex issue. One thought has been, if you could do something additive on that property, do we want to start to explore that as an alternative? But at this point in time, we have not advanced any of those ideas, right? Quite honestly, if we don't have a project at Creekside West, we don't need to worry about track and soccer. So in a sense, I don't want to say we've taken it off the table. It's one of many things we have to balance here, but only if we have a project at Creekside West and Creekside East, but that project has changed in its context. Do we then need to solve for that? And there are different ways we think we could solve for that. We've done a little bit of work to start to say, all right, what might the alternatives be? But it's a thought. It's not a proposal. It's not a plan.
Perfect. I mean, I feel like you said it 3 times, and I apologize for asking you to say it again, but I
No,
really
let's
just
be
know
clear about it.
It's something that we've received a lot of questions about. The pedestrian bridge, I think, is somewhat critical to this project in regards to looking at traffic in the future, because I think that's key to looking at taking automobiles off the road on Lakeshore. In your presentation, it's obviously one of the infrastructure improvements that kind of benefits in my opinion, the community at large, whereas some of them are kind of localized to the development. What type of approvals would you need to make that happen? I mean, you're involving ALDOT. What type of time frame are we talking about? I mean, I did hear you use the word we'd hope to do it. I mean, what kind of assurance can you give us on that?
Yeah, we've done the initial engineering planning work and traffic studies that we would ultimately need to present to LDOT to advance that. You know, timing on those types of things isn't something we can stand here tonight and say it will be done in X time frame.
Right.
What I can tell you is we have done a tremendous amount of this type of work and dealt with many, many issues like this. And I think we see arguments and a presentation we can make on merit that will get very serious consideration, and would expect we can get this done in a reasonable time frame. I agree with your point. It really needs to happen. If nothing else were to materialize there, it really needs to happen. So I think I can say with confidence, we built the case, and I think the case, I would expect the case will be received well. And don't know that we'll limit it to LDOT. There are many opportunities at the federal level that may provide financing support as well, so we want to exhaust those alternatives as well.
And I've got a couple more questions. I'll just leave it at this one. On your projections, you show, I think, 40 years out, with the first 20 where you're receiving, you know, recouping some of the infrastructure costs at that 23 to 27%. What with those trends, the dollars projected that you're using, I guess I'm just trying to find what comparable developments, maybe nationally or maybe Madison or where you're comparing that to, because we look at some developments locally in the life cycle of like Brookwood over 40 years or Galleria over 40 years. What confidence can you have in those projections, especially as you get to years 20 through 40, that revenue continues to increase, you know, and really come back to the community at the point where, you know, we're receiving 100% of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of years, right? I mean, I hope to be here in 40 years, but I'm not going to lay a bet on that. One of the things that we've done, quite honestly, I said we've stepped the model back. One of the things that the economists stepped back were the growth rates that we were using. And they were not particularly aggressive growth rates. They were growth rates that, you know, there's all these different indicators that they use, but we're using measures at the lower end of that spectrum because the numbers were just getting really big. Now, I would argue, it's one opinion, but I would argue the likelihood that we're going to see greater escalation in these kinds of models, there's a greater likelihood we'll see that than we're going to see these numbers going the other way. I mean, we haven't done an analysis for years that's looking at any type of contraction on cost, just the opposite. So don't know how tax-based modeling could ever go the other way. Property values, never could have imagined we'd see property values or cost to build like we see now. So the other point I would share with you is, for what it's worth, I've spent probably an inordinate number of nights in my life having these kinds of conversations, presenting these kinds of economic models and what have you, and trying to help build a case that we can all get comfortable with. I mean, bear in mind, we have to get comfortable with this. Sanford has to get comfortable with this as an investment as well as the city and the community. But I do know this, in all of the work that we've done, and all of the economic modeling that we've generated, and all of the projects that we've developed, I have never sat at a table and had someone come back and raise a question or show any evidence that the fiscal modeling was not fully realized. What I have had is a good number of instances where the forecasts were exceeded, and exceeded by a lot. We did a project like this in Rochester, Minnesota with Mayo Clinic. Very kind of similar context. It has outpaced the forecasts by measurable amounts. Allentown, Pennsylvania, a city that was total economic loss. We started a project there in 2008, 2009 that's led to almost $2 billion of economic development. probably the most distressed city that we've ever worked in. So when done right, when you have these different levers that you can pull in your favor, and this is where you have great advantage. I mean, if the opinion is, hey, we don't need it, we don't need the tax base, I've never heard a city really take that position in this day and age, because the challenges are just so daunting, paying for schools and roads and services and what have you. So all we're really asking for is let's weigh the breadth of what the benefits can be, knowing that, you know, there's challenges here. If we just said, hey, cut it in half, make it smaller, well then we can't support the infrastructure. I mean, one argument we were looking at, Colin, you can attest to this, is there a greater density that would help us take some of the economic pressure off? And we just said, stop, that doesn't feel like it fits. So it's a balancing act, and that's all we're asking is let's get all the ideas on the table and try and find something that feels like it fits, that really will create measurable benefits and drive quality of life for Homewood. But I can't say there won't, you know, is a building too tall as proposed or what have you, don't know. But, you know, we've encountered a lot of these issues, and I think in almost every case we've found very good solutions.
Well, I mean, I just want to say thanks for that. I mean, the financial modeling is one aspect, and as you reference, you know, y'all are taking on some of that risk. I think the city you referenced, because you're doing the infrastructure, potentially is not taking on as much of that risk. But I think the risk for us that we're also trying to evaluate is what you're talking to the residents about a lot: the environmental risk, the social risk, the quality of life risk. So that's definitely what we're considering in evaluation. And thank you for putting your work into that, and appreciate the ongoing dialogue.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Councilor Wilkerson.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, I guess because for my purposes, I'm still a little confused. I've heard a couple of different things about, okay, so it's Sanford property. The development is going to be sold, leased. Landmark is going to own the land, not own the land. Yeah, what's the structure for the land use that we're talking about?
The underlying land of Creekside West will continue to be owned by Sanford. We'll do a ground lease for all the vertical development, and that's pretty common with universities, research parks and that type of thing. University will always own the land, and the vertical improvements will be privately developed.
So just to clarify, that kind of reiterates Councilor Brandt's point about the housing then being not institutional, not owned by the university itself, correct?
That's correct, but one of the things that we've talked about in planning and ultimately we'll come to the council with, and one of the things we're working on with our DAG, our Development Advisory Group, is there will be a set of governing covenants. I mean, the trustees of Sanford University are not in any way interested in seeing a residential environment pop up next to campus that in any way is a negative to campus. Just the opposite. The idea is to create something that is always a complement to campus. So in our covenants that we'll write, that will be recorded and run with the land, we'll establish what those operating covenants are as it relates to the Sanford affiliate housing. I mean, the one party that, I'm not saying more so than the city, but you can rest assured the trustees at Sanford University are never going to allow something to get built on land they'll own forever that has any negative consequence on the university. So that's very different. If we were just buying a piece of land or leasing a piece of land, there would be no covenants. That as a document, as a governing document, wouldn't exist.
Sure. I could be wrong, but I still think there's some concerns there about the legality of your ability to control what you're referencing in terms of the housing being affiliated, Sanford only, that sort of thing, since it would cease to be institutional. But that I guess that's something that you guys still need to figure out, it sounds like. So that helps. And then Creekside East, I guess. So we just talked about West. East will still remain Sanford only.
Yes.
I gotcha. Pedestrian bridge, I'm just going off of concerns that I've heard from constituents too. There's been concerns from people kind of being approached to get off campus if they didn't belong there, that kind of thing over the last couple of years, people coming in to try to take pictures for prom, dances, that sort of thing. So pedestrian bridge is great. It sounds almost like it's proposed as a community use, although I'm struggling to see that that would be the case. It sounds like it's really just a Sanford-only pedestrian bridge, since it would connect to Sanford's campus, but not really connect anywhere else in the community.
Good question. One of the things we're looking at is can we, have kind of a dedicated pathway so it can connect to the community? And that's part of what, actually tomorrow night, that's part of what I think will come up in the planning commission meeting. But the intent is not to make it just, land on campus and only for campus.
Okay. Sure. And I don't want to belabor it, but I coached a couple of my kids' soccer teams. First question I got Tuesday from parents. So you're gonna, because some of them know that I'm serving this role too. So what's this about you guys agreeing to allow? And so I just want to reiterate that I feel like, to Councilor Sims' point, the way in which it was portrayed to the community last week was a little misleading and reckless. And it's frustrating sitting here and having to field phone calls, text messages, emails from people that are pissed about it in a way in which, we had no control over. And I'm sure that wasn't, or hopefully that wasn't the intent.
It's not the intent.
But I think from a messaging standpoint, a PR standpoint, we need to be very careful and cautious about what we're proposing and putting out there, and the way in which we are stating it is or isn't, in stone or not, or these are some ideas we're thinking about. I've had concerns from constituents that have come to some of the public sessions. Some of them wanted to, some of them probably rebel rousers wanted, mic'd so that they could, and they didn't find that environment in a couple, instances. They just came in and there was a gallery to kind of look at things. But I just want to be careful about how we are stating where the development is and where we are in this process. Several of them felt like there were members from the university or the developer that indicated that, well, it's our property, we can do what we want with it. This is almost, a done deal. So I don't think that's true, but people that came and spent time walked away in some cases feeling like that was the case. So
yeah, I'll speak to it again. I'm happy to continue speaking to it. In no way was it our intent to be misleading or to get ahead of the curve or what have you in any way. All we're interested in doing is exploring avenues in every aspect of the project where we can get ideas on the table and in an open public forum, really vet and evaluate these ideas, whether it's sports and rec, a bridge over Lakeshore Drive, how to improve the watershed, all of these things. I hope we've demonstrated a real commitment to community engagement. So, we'll take full responsibility if in some way that was taken out of context. I spoke about it with Dr. Taylor. We were trying to be clear that, we're going to move away from Creekside East, and we want to begin to explore ideas and potentially bring a proposal to the city. We never would in any way suggest it's not city-owned land. If that's been discussed, that's just not accurate. And we didn't make those statements. But I also have to say, having done this a lot, it's always the case that when we put something like this on the table, large and small, it creates a real dialogue. Projects large and small. These guys, I say it every week. It's amazing anything gets built in this country anymore. That's the process. And the more we reach out for community engagement, the more of that we're creating. And frankly, when you have an academic partner as your partner, frankly, that's a good thing. I don't think you see us shying away from any issues or any subject or any points of engagement. It is a big project. It's got a lot of moving parts that come with it. It's unavoidable that you have something like this that we're dealing with and something doesn't get taken out of context.
Sure.
We're doing the best we can do to put in black and white our ideas, our analysis, our thoughts don't in any way want to be misleading. We're just trying to be as clear and forthcoming as we can be, in hopes that when we all step back and you have to vote on this, that the opportunity, the greater benefit outweighs whatever the negatives are deemed to be. I cannot tell you there's not going to be, we're going to find a solution that has no negatives. I mean, if that's the only outcome we can consider, we should all go celebrate Cinco de Mayo, roll up the plans, and move on in life, because we're never going to get to that plan. So all I'm asking is hang with us, apologize if there was any misleading statement that was not the intent with respect to soccer. The only point is, if we can do things that are additive, is that worth considering?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll make one quick comment, and then I think the mayor wanted to make a comment. Was that correct? I saw your hand go up.
I just got one question.
Okay. I did want to make a comment about the soccer facilities. I've received a lot of blowback last week from the community as well. I will say, you guys have done a great job of reaching out and putting together committees, listening to the concerns about the salamander, and that idea came out of those meetings. And you know, that's fantastic. I appreciate you guys doing that. I feel confident, as speaking as just Andy Waltney, the counselor, that we need to move on from moving the soccer fields onto our fields. I don't think it will be responsible of us to handcuff this community for the next 40 years on a shared soccer field with something that, you know, the community doesn't seem like they want, because I've not received one single person say, oh, this is a great idea. And I don't mean to close the book on it, but there can be other ideas that you bring to the table, but I feel like this is one that we need to let it go. We already have capacity issues with our kids there. As we know, Homewood is growing leaps and bounds. You know, families are moving in here, they're having more children, and those capacity issues are going to continue to be a problem for us, and I just don't think it's going to be a good fit. So, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I've just got one question, or I think it's just one, and that is about the incentives. So, this is nothing new to you. I've told you this before. This is a historically large incentive ask for Homewood. It's a time period that's longer than what we usually do. I guess my question, and I've heard the percentages and all that. I guess my question is, are you proposing that this have a cap? Because usually when we do incentives, first of all, we've never done incentives where we pay out on the front end. They are all, this is the way we've always done it, is this way where either the tax money shows up or it doesn't, to your point.
And to be clear, we're not asking.
I know. And you are right. Either the tax money shows up or it doesn't. We only give money back if the tax money shows up. I certainly think that's correct. My question simply is there a cap that you are including in this, or is there not a cap with that percentage?
I think we'd certainly be open to talking about that.
Okay. But y'all don't have a number as we sit here.
I don't. You asked me what is the cap. I couldn't answer that standing here right now. But
okay.
Alex, East.
Oh, and secondly, with regard to East, just from a procedural standpoint for what we're doing, because we have two items on the agenda, one for West and one for East. Are we not moving forward with East at this point and just doing West? Or is it your desire to move forward with what's left of the East, in which case we need to figure out whether or not that has to go back to the Planning Commission, and I just don't know where we are with that.
I'd like to offer, if it's acceptable to you, that Lynette Crandall speak with the city attorney tomorrow.
Okay.
And just
Let me speak
walk.
now.
Okay.
We have to publish a public hearing June the 9th. Is what it's been authorized. And we've got to get the deadline quickly. If you are not moving forward with East, then we would need you to withdraw that application or that request so that we don't get in a position that we haven't advertised appropriately for a length of time.
So just for everyone's benefit, with respect to East, we do want to rezone East, right? The rec fields that are there now are a non-conforming use. We do want to rezone East.
Yeah,
the development plan that we filed, application 2, is going to be amended. Whether that amendment falls within, the technical, what we're allowed to do to amend that, that's the conversation we'd like to have.
Well, I guess
it's substantially different than what
the
Planning Commission approved and sent to us, and have to go back to the Planning Commission.
Okay. Well, if we can just verify that, I think we can answer this tomorrow morning.
Okay.
But if that's if the technical change.
I don't know what the technical change is.
Yeah, that's part of the issue is we don't know what's left.
Okay.
And so if y'all can let us know what's left on what you're moving forward with on East, then we can determine whether or not it's a substantial change that has to start over. Yeah.
And just to be clear for folks in the room, the rezoning for the east is going from PMUD, right, to institutional. Okay.
Correct.
That's the proposed
proposal. Yeah. Just making sure.
Technically a downgrade.
Yeah.
The east side is going to institution.
Mm-hmm. It's fast.
It's non-conforming.
But it can't go without
It's being used right now as institutional.
Can go without the development plan. We can't pass the development plan.
What now?
It can't be rezoned without a development.
That's correct.
Right. So if the development plan has to go back to planning commission, the rezoning also has to go back to.
Correct. You can't have that zoning without a development plan. And if the development plan is substantially different than what we have now, which was the track and the pre-salamander issues, then
We'll get this sorted out in the morning, and then we'll have clarity on what's on the agenda for June 9th.
Okay, I do want to give the public a chance to speak. Is there any other commentary that anybody wants to offer before we move along? I will give my commentary just briefly on the 23%. I don't like the term, the duration being 20 years. I don't like the roughly 23% or 24 million, depending on how you calculate it. I take umbrage with the commentary that we're enticing the civic, municipalities have to entice people to build this stuff. We don't need that in this case. And for me, this is a quality of life issue. I'm not willing to sacrifice the quality of life for our residents for a somewhat known or unknown tax incentive in the future or tax benefit in the future. And I think most people in Homewood would stand with that as well. So with that, I tried to sum those up real briefly. If anyone wants to stand up and speak, what I would like to do is let's try to keep the commentary to new items that have not been already said, and let's go with about maybe 2 to 3 minutes per person. I'm not going to time these, but just do so. And if you are speaking, please come to, well, you can stand up wherever you are, but please give us your address and state your name. All right. Yes.
121 Winslow Drive. I think one of the concerns is everything is still so vague.
And I'm so sorry, I know that you said that, but because of what's going on, if we can get them to come to the front where we can hear them really well. Or at least
Would this,
come close to that.
yeah, let us know if you can hear it okay, and then.
Because I couldn't hear her at all. You can have my seat if you want. Thank you, sorry.
That's okay. I think one of the concerns is everything is still so very vague. It's a concept, and people are extremely concerned about what may or may not wind up happening. As an example, could we go back to your slide 1?
Brian, are you good with audio?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead
Yes,
while
you're
he's
doing it.
pulling that up. You spoke about educational excellence at all levels on that slide. There are no specifics to that. It's just a vague statement. So I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. And also on that slide, you talk about community investment and multi-phased master plan development always requires civic infrastructure. Well, it does, but these incentives you're asking for are on basically the infrastructure that you're installing on a private development. So the city's really not getting anything back on that. The other thing is we're talking about community engagement. This is a development for young people. When the rubber meets the road, this is for college kids. It's to make the college more enjoyable for your current students and to draw more students in. So as far as the overall Homewood community, I don't think you're going to see that much involvement from the community. The salamanders have been addressed. The soccer club has been addressed, but the school has not been addressed. And I have mentioned before about possibly, if this goes forward, building a dedicated bridge from the road into this development so that the school traffic doesn't have to share with the construction traffic and all the traffic going into this development. I'm not saying yet whether I agree or disagree with the development. I'm just saying that everything is still so vague at this point. I'm having trouble being able to buy into it because there are so many things that are unknowns at this point.
All right, who else would like to speak to this? You want to go next? Feel free. We would love to hear. Hi, everyone. My name's Mason Cook. I'm the executive director of Homewood Soccer Club. Been fortunate enough to be in that role for 11 years, and have been hanging out at Homewood Soccer Park for 17 now. As mentioned, for us to continue to serve our members, the location of those fields, the quality of the facility, the central location. Just got a photo. We have 203 kids there right now doing a pizza party. That's what the community is for us. That's what's so special about being part of this program. We have no interest or use for a stadium on those fields. And as long as we continue to have 3 fields in that location, we can serve well over 2,000 members in the community. If we have less than that, we're going to have serious constraints. So that's my concerns and what I wanted to share. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Cook. We appreciate your input. Yeah, come on. Just give us your address and your name, please.
Well, my name's Kathy Miller, and I live in Woodridge. It's the neighborhood in Vestavia that overlooks the proposed development. I realize I'm in Vestavia, but I just wanted to say someone from our neighborhood has been at most of the meetings here, and we really appreciate. I hope that you're considering our neighborhood. Although we are in Vestavia, we're probably the closest neighborhood to this proposed development. So just wanted to say thank you, and if you need anything from us, we're here.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, back to the committee. So Finance Committee, we have an item before us for an economic incentive for request for the infrastructure development costs. Thoughts on how it can move forward? Bear in mind that we have been told that it basically has no cap, and it's roughly 20 years in duration, 23%. Since there's just 3 of us.
Yeah.
What do you think at this point? He's going to
Any yes, no's?
Okay, so you've got a couple
So,
of
yeah.
options.
We could-
You can, so the incentives really, you can't approve the incentives until a development plan and the zoning is either approved or not approved.
Yeah.
And so, because you would have to know what's going on with the land in order to know whether or not the incentives, the city is interested in incentives or not. So my suggestion would be to carry this over and hear the presentation on the 19th about those details as well. You're not no one's losing any time or anything at this point because that has to come first anyway. As a matter of fact, we'll have to do a public hearing on the incentives and do notice, and that can't even start until
We have an agreement.
we have an agreement on the other part. So, so at any rate, I don't think I don't think you're losing anything by carrying it over, but it's up to the committee as to what you want to do.
No, I don't think so either. The only recommendation I was gonna make was that we push this out, without recommendation pending the public, well, there's no public hearing, but pending those other items being addressed, which, so carrying it over holds the same water. I will say, just from the perspective I gave a minute ago, which is very brief, I have a page of notes almost, most of it related to the incentive. I'm not comfortable with an unknown number. It has to be a firm number. And I appreciate the data that you guys have. The data's been fantastic. I feel like the number is not firm because you don't know where it needs to be right now. And I would recommend before the next set of meetings, we pinpoint that number so that we know where it's at. Otherwise, I can't get behind it.
Mr. Walden, we couldn't adopt a development agreement that's non-specific as to numbers.
So we'd have to have a number then. Okay.
Correct.
Excellent. Committee? Anything else?
Yeah, I think carrying it over.
If there's no objections, we'll carry over 440425, and I will hand the baton back to Councilor Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walmy. That was a lot, so I appreciate you taking over that. And I guess we'll do it again. We'll do it again soon.
Did I drop it? My white shirt.
Okay.
Wheel grease all over it now. Thanks.
So moving on to our next item on our old business agenda. It is 240325. Request permission to consider property issue at 1832 24th Court South. Coming to us from Kel Smith, our city engineer. This is the piece of property, the house that is on part of our Lee Center property over there on that side. We did get the completed survey last week.
Yeah, but that's,
Yeah,
yeah, the survey. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so that, we got the survey completed, and you see the community center there, and this is the house that's in question, on our parcel, so. That's the question, and then I did an exhibit, the one I just sent you, Brian, 2 weeks ago, that shows a potential, a possibility for us if we were to sell the property.
Okay. So that is the hatched part is
Right.
the piece of property that is in question. And you've got it at a purchase price of $81,5955.
That's right. 13 and a half feet wide, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, 15 at the front.
Right, it gets a little bit lower down there.
And they'll come back and have to match their survey up to that. There'll be a deed to that sliver, right, I guess.
Yeah, so we'll probably resurvey the property, because we need to incorporate this lot into the community center lot also. But all that'll get recorded.
And confirmed with Mr. Kendrick that we had the discussion that there are certain circumstances where we cannot sell a piece of park property without having an election. This does not fall into that criteria. So this is not a situation where we would have to.
As long as it's not being used for park recreation purposes.
Which.
We use the fence lines kind of as a discussion point last time.
Right.
Does the survey denote the fence line?
Yeah, go back to the survey, Brian. It does. So this is the fence. The fence is just on the outside of the concrete sidewalk.
So would it be inside the sliver or outside the sliver? In the red on the other side.
So the red would come to like right there.
So the fence is
So the
where?
fence would be on the Lee Center property.
So the fence would need to change locations.
Nope. The fence would stay right where it is.
It's our fence.
It's our fence.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
But the fence gives us the benefit of being able to consider
You can
this,
certainly
otherwise
make
we
a
couldn't.
logical
Yeah.
argument that it's not been used for
Yeah.
park and recreation purposes. If it's a fence that's divided that property and its use versus park recreation, that's your call. But that, to me, would be logical and reasonable if you want to come to that conclusion.
I'll make a motion that we sell it for your estimated price.
And it's not an estimated price, it's what the value of the property on each
It's the
side.
assessed value.
Yes, the assessed value by the square footage.
But it costs us something to figure this out.
Yeah, the survey costs, but I would argue we should have had that anyway.
Well,
And we should have had that.
All right, so I have a motion from Mr. Brandt,
I'll second
second from Mr. Harden.
Can I get clarification on the motion is to sell for that consideration?
For the
Yes, I think.
8,195 amount.
Okay.
Quick question.
Oh, sure.
Has the property owners been made aware of this, and do they want to buy it for that amount?
The property owner has not been made aware of the number, the exact number.
They don't have any choice.
Right.
Yeah.
If they wanna buy it, they're gonna buy it for that price.
Well, I mean, I just,
Well,
you know,
they
they were
can't
here
occupy it.
asking,
They
I'm
can't get a
just
mortgage.
wondering if we've passed.
I believe that was their real
information along
estate, and you've been talking to the actual owner, because the real estate agent was the person who was here.
Right.
So, and yeah, I mean, Mr. Kendrick is right, like, that's the number, so if you want the property, then that's the number.
Well, they can't
If you
take a
don't,
mortgage
then-
without it.
Yeah, and they cannot get a clear title without that.
I wanna check something. I don't know that number is exact. I
Right.
drew that number on a preliminary survey
Okay.
that was provided 2 weeks ago, and then we got the real survey
Okay.
the other day.
So
And I
you'd like
didn't know
to-
we were actually gonna talk about this
Okay,
tonight.
okay,
So,
well,
um,
would you like us to carry it over so that we can discuss it at our next meeting so that you can recalculate it, just to make sure that the number is correct before we make a motion saying a certain number?
I would like that to happen because
Yes.
we should add in the costs that we are incurring to
To
figure out.
clear this up, because
Can
it's
we
not
do
our,
that,
it's not our
Bob?
problem to solve, to be quite honest.
Can we add in our
You
costs?
can add anything you want to, you're selling the property. A willing buyer and a willing seller.
Understand that.
You're not.
I'm not
you're
asking
touching
a set of rules,
assessed
interest
value.
or anything else.
Selling
I'm
the
saying
property.
it should be the cost it costs us to physically do this.
It's a survey, it's a title.
So
Right.
not to belabor,
Sure.
but we do have a motion and a second on the table.
Yes, we do
So
have a
are you
motion and a second on
planning
the
to
table.
rescind yours?
But could we just make it contingent upon the finalized number instead of carrying over, just say, we'll sell it upon the revised number of the true assessed value plus the cost for the survey and have that, and can we move forward that way so we don't have to come back and it's just approved?
We could expedite that for the property owners too. Yeah, I like that.
I'm not really worried about expediting for them, to be honest.
I am.
Well, that's nice of you.
Well, by the way, I
mean, if
think
they're
that-
trying to get something done,
Would that
I
be
don't know why-
possible to make sure that we can just move forward and say that, you know, you'll get the real number, we'll add that, we'll alter it?
And you can even have the number by Monday, not the.
Correct, and so I think that we can just move forward with that, and we can amend the motion
The
to.
motion.
My amended motion is to.
Approve a sale pending the final.
Pending the confirmed assessed number plus the cost associated with getting the survey done.
All right, there's two things I need to talk about.
Okay.
You have to declare surplus on illegal trees.
Okay,
And then you can authorize it to be sold for whatever amount you come up with.
okay, so the motion also needs to include declaring the property surplus.
You can't sell without that.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so that is included in the motion, and you seconded that? All right, so I have a motion for Mr. Brandt and a second for Mr. Harden.
so before we vote,
Yes.
so, you know, there is a precedent that we're setting here.
Yes, we are.
That is, you know, precedent setting is not good. In some cases, I don't think this is I think this is one of those.
Yeah, I agree.
That we have a lot of risk downside in the future, especially being next to one of our properties, but.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, I got three, those in favor, not in favor.
No.
Aye, yeah.
No.
So that was, that passes 3-2 to go to council on Monday night. All right. All right, the next, item is 020425 on our old, business agenda. Request for consideration of a mid-year budget review. This came to, the agenda from myself. There is an additional, item later on that was added later. We don't need to have two issues of the same, two items with the same issue. So, under 020425, we are ready for our mid-year budget review, or until really February, end of February 2025.
February 28th.
Yeah.
2025.
Yeah, okay. All right.
You want the PowerPoint slideshow, right? Next slide. So I want to say that this is actually a pretty good news scenario that we have. We are we are pulling in revenue at the rate we were hoping and slightly a little bit better. And if you look at the expenditures on the right-hand side, we are actually expending right on track with what we were expecting. And we had some additional costs, and so this is actually a good news scenario for us right there. Next slide, please. And by the way, if you have a question, please feel free to speak up because it'll be easier to do it now than to go backwards. For the revenues, I just wanted you guys to be able to see what the revenues are looking like. And the most important thing for you all to look at is on the top section there, one column over from the end on the right, one column over, you're seeing a projection right now of 71 million, which is over the budget we had projected ourselves of 68 million. So we are doing our job right and doing a conservative estimate of revenue, and we're outpacing that estimate. And so we're doing very well. We are ahead in what we expect to achieve by the end of the fiscal year. So that's a good news scenario again. Next slide. This is by your different areas, by the directorates. If you want to take a moment to look at that, if you have any questions, it really is saying we are on track. Some areas are slightly less. If you look at admin, you hired me in March, and so nothing in February would have been spent until then. So understand that you'll probably be over a little bit when we hit the very end. But if you're looking at everything in general, all the way across this, we are exactly where we should be, and so we're doing very well. Next slide. This is going on further on. We have this broken up in several different ones, because if we put all the different directors all in one spot, you would have been overwhelmed. And for these directorates, these are the larger directorates, so they have more money, and if you wanted to see the previous ones, you wouldn't be able to have the granularity we had. So that's why these were split up the way they were. Again, we're doing good. And last one is capital expenditures. We have a little bit of granularity in there. Under the general, there's a lot more things going on to include. We have plans for the bond money we still have. And so that will kind of take things back into good light. Police vehicles, for example, there was 10 of them purchased, and that's why that was the value that it was right there. But we feel we're pretty much right on track, right where we should be at this point in the year.
I have a question there, Travis.
Yeah.
In terms of, look at street, and if I look at police, and we're February at the end, and we're halfway through the year, are we expecting spending more than we budgeted in both police and street, or is this, have we accommodated and just maybe front-ended the purchases there?
In a lot of cases, yes. I can't.
Yes. Okay, that's what I want to make sure, is that, in case, it's a question based on the visuals that will be.
Yeah, a lot of times we spend, do a lot of our spending at the beginning of the budget year, first quarter, and the first half, and we don't spend as much, we don't buy as many things in the second half of the year.
Okay, most of it's ordered, most of it's expenditures, big item tickets, so you're either vehicles or equipment, we go ahead and order them in October, but we don't get delivered till April or May or June.
Thank you, appreciate it. What everybody felt in the last director's meeting is we were really pretty close to where we wanted to be right at this point in time. In most cases, we're better off, so that's really good news. And I think that's our last slide for the budget.
Can I just say I'm so grateful that Glenn is here. Thank you, Glenn.
Can we do this on a quarterly basis?
I would prefer not to, but if you want to direct me, I can be directed to do that.
No, but thank you, because we've never had data like this. And, I mean, this is how decisions should be made. And
Once
keep
we
us
have the
informed.
next budget, regrettably, you won't be here for the execution of it. It will be easier to give you like a quarterly update, because we'll be able to look at a snapshot a little bit easier. Because like all of the things that we have to come back to you and request for, that's already budgeted, so we don't have to come back to you and request for, so those items are already in there and they can be used. Where we will have problems is where we didn't foresee something, then we have to do that.
You know, like, well, you've mentioned this on numerous occasions, once the form of government changes, a lot of the things that we currently have to deal with, the city manager will handle, without having to be, yeah. Well,
It's absolutely not.
well, I mean, I know that it's gonna eventually come to
He's
council.
responsible, I'll finance it.
Right, I get that, but we won't have to have as much involvement on the front end because the city manager will be dealing with a lot of the details in advance of that.
I will agree in general.
Okay.
My requirement to communicate with you becomes bigger.
Yes,
And
oh, sure.
so through regular communications, you're relieved of some of the stress. I won't say the responsibility, the
Yeah,
stress.
right, and I do say, like, getting a quarterly update.
Which is why I would
Yeah.
appreciate a
Yeah.
quarterly update, because
Yeah.
I think that we wait too long, and I'll say that a semi-annual reporting structure is too late.
That'll be an announcement.
Yeah, we're one of the few that do it.
Huh?
We're one of the few cities that do it.
Let me be
I
clear.
understand that, but if we want to be run like as the most efficient city as possible, we need to go above and beyond what other cities do. I don't care about that.
There won't be as much trouble once we get all the finances solved. And being able to snap that chalk line is more reasonable. And the clarity you get in a regular message will be easier.
Yes.
One thing I didn't see, where are we in terms of all of our tests for the fiscal policy? I mean, I had provided, Mr. Smith, I assume you put this thing together. Where are we on the test based on the fiscal policy? Did we pass all the tests? Typically, we get that back during our mid-year review.
So I don't have BMSS's.
No, I'm not
No,
talking about
it's not-
BMS.
it's not
Based on our
BMS.
fiscal policy, we have ground rules for, did we pass certain tests? Did we have enough
In the general fund or
in
the
the general
capital
fund?
fund.
Did we have enough in capital? That's where we always end up short, is in capital. And I provided Mr. Smith several examples of the mid-year review so that we could get that and see if we pass those tests. That's really why we wrote the fiscal policy in 2012, so that we could get a temperature gauge. I mean, it's great, these are great numbers, I'm excited about these numbers, but I wanted to see where we
And
are.
I'll take that responsibility right there. When I looked at it, I looked at these as the requirements. I will tell you, we have the funds in capital, and I will tell you that we have our funds across, the general fund is across multiple accounts, and it's not the way we want it. You've given direction for us to change it, and we're in the path of doing that change. And to brief that any different than we have the funds is just not an appropriate. We have a whole bunch of accounts, and we're trying to move to the accounts that we need to have.
Okay. We just spent a long time on the council putting together our fiscal policy, and it dictated clearly what we want to see in the mid-year review. And if we can get it quarterly, that's even better. But that's all I have to say. I was expecting to see that, did not see that. Thank you.
Okay, oh, the door thing. Okay, gotcha. All right, so, I think the appropriate, motion here is to accept the report from, Mr. Adams, and we will work toward getting those, fiscal tests
If we get like
done.
a timeline for making sure that we have passed or get a sense of those.
And I think part of that is, this mid-year review actually isn't really a mid-year review because it's ending on February 28th of 2025. So we don't have the full and complete picture for an entire 6 months, because they are still getting the journal entries and things done. So, I would say.
This should be the end of March, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be through the end of March. So, I would say if we could do the fiscal tests by maybe our first meetings in June, just to kind of make sure once we've got the year closed, the half a year closed out, see if we can do those financial tests so that we can report that back. And again, Walter and I can get with y'all to go into more detail about that later.
Wouldn't it be better to carry it over then till then?
I mean, I guess we could, or we could just add a new item, but would you prefer to carry it over?
I think we
Happy
just
to
carry
do
it
that.
over and
Okay.
and then just get the test result.
You get the test when we have it, okay, all right, with that, 020425 is gonna be carried over until we can get the results of those financial tests. All right, we've already done 070425, moving to our new business agenda, 230425, request to authorize the city manager to sign a contract with White Oak Solutions for IT engineering services, coming to us from Brandon Sims, our IT director. Why don't you explain to us, Mr. Sims, what we are talking about?
Absolutely. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. So, as part of our attempt to address some of the aging infrastructure as well as some of the outstanding cybersecurity issues that we have, part of what we're doing right now is phase 1 of our core network infrastructure overhaul. To make it a little more layman's, your network is effectively your it's the nervous system, right, for your technology infrastructure. It is what carries signals from one side of the city to the other. As it stands, the city has what's considered a spoke and wheel topology. So that means that pretty much City Hall sits in the middle, and everybody else hangs off of City Hall and comes back to City Hall to get out to the internet, and so on and so forth. This currently is an issue in the sense that there is a single device sitting in the middle. So if that goes down, or if we have to do any type of updates, we have to bring the entire city down in order to do that. That is not good. So we would like to introduce some redundancy in that core router. We'd also like to introduce some new firewalls here at City Hall. Additionally, we would like to introduce some new firewalls at the police station, as well as some redundancy in their core routing at the police station. The main reason for this is because we want to introduce some proper network segmentation so that we have better control over where traffic is allowed to go within the city. One of the big concerns that I have is that, particularly for the police department, they should effectively be in a logical bubble. No one, nothing should be coming in and out that doesn't belong. And we are managing to do that in a way now that just isn't as efficient as it needs to be. And so this contract with White Oak is effectively for us to bring on engineers that will help us to map out what we currently have in place now and develop a great plan for transitioning to the configuration of the new equipment. And they're going to also configure all of the equipment for us once we have the design in place.
Mr. Sims, while you're here,
Sure.
I have that we are going to be taking these funds for this contract out of our IT engineering services line item. Is there an amount on the contract? Because Bo and I looked and we could not find a number.
Oh, sorry. It is. I think it's on. If it's not on the last page, it's on. It's in there for. It should be 24,000.
Okay. All right, 24. I don't know.
Let's see.
I don't think that's. Okay,
Yeah.
on page 14. Okay, that's what I'm just looking to. Okay.
Sorry.
I have a question.
Yeah, there we go, 24,000.
I wasn't familiar with White Oak, and I went through some of that. I didn't get all the way through it. Do you have confidence in them to complete the project?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been very intentional since some of the historical network engineering issues that we're overcoming since I got here. I've been very intentional about making sure that we are working with the type of engineers who, to me, just bring a standard of planning that we weren't seeing in our previous groups.
All right, so this would be $24,000, having the city manager sign the contract to come out of the engineering, the IT engineering services contract. Yeah, all right.
So this one should be coming out of, because I believe I submitted it. This one, so yeah, it's, I'm not sure. Is it listed as IT engineering in the budget? It is? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, I just wanted to make sure that
That
was
was the
out of
right.
the capital.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
It is.
All right.
There is one unique, at your request and Mary's approval, $5,000, you've got to approve a change order up to $5,000 in addition to this. So it's
Okay.
technically $29,000.
Okay, so we should say, instead of the actual amount, maybe increase it to not to exceed 30, maybe? Just to be safe, or not to exceed 29?
The amount is $24,000 plus he's got up to $5,000.
5,000 for a change order,
That's what
okay.
I was asked to put in there.
Okay. Yes.
Do we have a timeline? I might have sent an email today. I don't know if it went through. I'm sorry, it's an email issue still, but that's not on the city status of mine. So do you have a time frame, duration? When do you expect them to start, maybe finish?
So as soon as we get approval of this, we will start. We've already started high-level discussions on the design stuff. So what is this? What month is this now?
May 5th.
July, August. I would hope that we would be able to get this completed by August.
Okay. I was just curious.
So, yeah.
If people
But
have
it would not surprise me if it took us closer to 4 to 6 months. Once we get into, once we get into trying to keep from causing major outages. So the plan is to be able to stand this up in parallel, but we will adjust that timeline as we go.
No anticipation of supply chain issues on those devices?
We already have the devices.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
Thanks.
All right.
I got a question real quick.
Oh.
Brandon, just overall technology, something happens to you. Does somebody have all the codes? I'm being totally serious.
Yeah.
Is there somebody, cloud-based?
Absolutely.
Or we have physical servers here, is that correct?
So we do have physical servers here. So this is, there's layers to your infrastructure, right? You've got your server environment and you've got your network that facilitates communication back and forth. This project is addressing the network layer. Couple things. One, you'll notice that in here, Justin Bush is also listed as a key stakeholder in this. Justin is our system administrator, so he is actually the person who is going to be working most closely with the engineers to ensure. I will be working as oversight and as part of that engineering team, but Justin will be very familiar with how all this is mapped out. Additionally, one of the reasons that we chose to go with a FortiGate Fortinet solution is because it is pretty much an industry standard, particularly in government and in organizations that are our size. So this is a solution that what we want to do is we want to move away from some of the solutions that we have in-house now, which is if you are not well versed in that, it can be very difficult to find help. I think the previous regime, one of the solutions they tried to do for the network overhaul, they put in a solution that isn't well known, and that was one of the reasons why we're having to kind of come back now, because we couldn't find the engineering support to help us get the one that they partially started off the ground.
Duly noted, okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, if I
anybody
make-
else have any additional questions? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna make a motion for approval, but
Okay, all
not
right,
unless
if there's no other questions, all right. All right, have a motion from Mr. Gwaltney to, and I assume that is to approve the contract being signed for $24,000 plus the $5,000.
Not to exceed
Yeah.
$30,000.
Yeah, okay. All right, and then I had a second from Mr. Alman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is 5-0 now. All right, let's see. 240425, request to execute a contract with Wallcraft for creek wall footing repairs from Mr. Smith. This is one of those fun things that showed up when we started working on the other creek
So
walls.
go to the next slide, Brian, or to the next, yeah, there. So if you remember the creek wall behind 711 Broadway, which is right under the word that says Project Group 1, the creek wall fell and it was an emergency. So the contractor showed up, was ready to work, and Alabama Power said, y'all gotta hang on a second, we've gotta hold these power poles in place. So the contractor was there, they were in the creek, they were ready to start working, and they couldn't do anything for about a week. And so we looked at areas in the creek bed that had been identified in our creek conditions assessment. And we said, oh, well, right across the creek, there are all these failed footings that need to be repaired because they show up red and yellow. And so they were able to get right on that since they were already in the creek, so we didn't have to pay mobilization and all that. So I talked to Glenn and talked to the mayor, and they agreed, yeah, let's go ahead and release them to do this work. So that, this contract approval is for $21,250, I think, to make the contract piece of it right. But the work is already underway and probably finished by now.
And this is, and the reason this can't be lumped in with the other contract, because that contract had already been signed.
Awarded, that's right.
Yeah, for the other,
Scope
for the
of
other
work
side.
is different.
Right, it's a different scope of work. So, we're talking about $21,250, and we're gonna be transferring that money from the carryover fund balance into the emergency creek wall repair line item.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right.
Second.
Have a motion from Mr. Brandt and a second from Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is 5-0, and is approved. All right, we have 250425, request for consideration to pay an invoice for auditing expenses to BMSS, coming to us from our city manager. Mr. Adams, I do have a question. The amount of this invoice from BMSS, and this is for the 23 audit, I believe, and the invoice was received in November of 24. Actually, I have two questions. The first is, I'm curious why it hadn't been paid yet. That would be my first question, since it came in November. Yes, please.
This one? So, you know me, full transparency, so ask away. The reason the invoice hasn't been paid is, as your finance director, I'm not allowed to pay any invoice for which there is not a funding source. Does that make sense? So let's say that what was approved in the budget was $150,000.
It was $130,000. I'm looking at it right here.
Correct. We'll go over that too if you'd like. If I get an invoice in, it's $150,000, then it's above what was budgeted. I'm not authorized to approve that invoice. Does that make sense? So
It
we
does
receive-
indeed, but I guess my question would be, it was obviously, it was, you know, $39,000 over what we had budgeted for our auditing company, for our auditors. I guess my question is, why are we here in May? And why didn't that come to us before now? Is that would be my second question, and then I have a third question. But that would be my second. I'm guessing, I'm wondering why it didn't come to us in 6 months' time, 7 months' time.
So I believe the invoice was received sometime in January. I've got a copy of the invoice. I could-
Oh, I thought it was November originally.
January 23rd was stamped and received by our finance.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so still 5 months. I mean, and my guess is, if we knew that the invoice was more than it was allowed to be, because it was more than the budgeted amount, my question still stands, whether it was November or January, is why are we just now talking about this in May?
So I was made, when the invoice was received,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily when I became aware of it. I believe I became aware of this sometime in February. I think the first notification I provided to anybody was February 28th, I think, when we met, Mayor and Councilor Smith, and I mentioned that we were over budget for the fiscal 2023 year end. I think what I want everybody to keep in mind is there is when an item is paid, and then there's a different time period for what the item is for. So if you think about your 2023 audit, 2023 audit is usually performed in fiscal year 2024, okay? So what we were looking at here is this is the audit that once they came out to perform the audit, I was not here, but from my understanding, they were on site. During the time period they were out here on site, that's when the embezzlement was uncovered, right? At that point in time, I believe that y'all had the statement of examiners in here, as well as we also had another external auditing firm in to actually do a forensic audit. So the auditors left. Okay? They then came back in October, and when they came back in October, they were asked to expedite this audit. We got that audit done in, I think, 30 days, okay? In order to do that, from my understanding, I do not want to speak for them. I asked if they would be able to be here tonight, but they were not able to. But in order to get this done, they had to bring additional staff on site to get the audit done. So this $169,000 that we're looking at is not the cost of the audit if you compare it to $130,000 or $150,000. what I'll also hand out to you is what I did receive from the auditors. And what I asked them to do here is I said, don't give me when you invoiced us. Now, they have the invoice there, but I said, give me the cost of the product that the city purchased. So think about that. What do we buy? We buy a 2023 audit. We buy a 2024 audit. We bought a 2020 audit, a 2021 audit. So what this here shows is the actual cost of the audit. I think that if you look at this, you'll see that going back to 2021, which is what I asked for, give me some historical context. The audit in 2021, I believe, came into the city at a cost at about 160, 22 at 170, 23 came in right at about 282, and I'm projecting that 24 will probably come in at about 280. Why the increase? The increase in the last 2 years is primarily attributable to the additional testing. I do not want to speak to the auditors, so we'll have to ask them that when they get here. But from my understanding, it's due to the additional testing that took place as a result of the audit. You can think about it, you come out to do an audit, there's more risk, so there's more testing. So what you're looking at now is the actual price of those. So when I started looking at this year and I came in, as I said, well, what did we budget this year? Because it's not just the cost of this one audit, it's the cost of the other auditors that we had in here, right? So I said, well, let's start. Everybody got a copy of this, right?
No.
I'm sorry. Y'all definitely
Yeah, no.
want that. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one.
So here I said, this is a copy of the actual budget going into this year.
Yeah.
See one of those around.
Got it.
There's two accounts that we're going to primarily focus on. One's going to be accounting and auditing services, which sounds what you think it would be. And the other is contractual services. What I want you to focus on is the items I have highlighted. So when we talk about auditing, right, that's the actual audit that's being done. There's several components to that audit. So the auditing firm here, your audit, that's your financial statement audit, which I've alluded to before, that's $130,000. There's the single audit. The single audit is a required audit that has to be done if you've received more than $750,000. It's going up to $1 million. But if you've received more than $750,000 in federal funding, right? I think what triggered this was probably the ARPA money that you received.
Sure.
Okay? Then there's other, and then there's another item called OPEB. Okay, OPEB stands for Other Post-Employee Benefits. I think the OPEB benefit you have here pertains to health insurance, right? It's health insurance that's provided to retirees until they hit the age of 65. If you look at that, that's roughly somewhere around $159,000. Of the OPEB, I think the actual cost that we pay is called a company called Cap Risk for them to do the calculation for the footnote in the financial statements, about $6,900. Okay, if you back that out, you've got somewhere then about $153,000 for the audit. If you look at those numbers that I passed out for the cost of the audit, you can see you went above that, right? But the other issue that we had relative to this is if you look down to your contractual services, there was $20,000 in there for just accounting services. And that's usually, I believe, what y'all have utilized in the last couple of years of bringing in an external accounting firm to assist with the year-end close, okay? Now let me pass this out. This is, we kind of hit budget, so now look at what actually happened. And this may give you some ideas why I put the brakes on everything. But I will never approve an invoice for which we have not certified funding for, okay? And I recommend any and all department heads not to do that, because I think if you go back and you look at the Mayor-Council Act, and I'm not sure if it's just for Class 1 cities or if it's all of them, that's grounds for termination. It is a no-no, okay? So y'all set the budget. The department heads are required to follow that budget, okay? If we look at this, we go to the accounting and auditing services, and we've already looked at what we budgeted for that. You can see that currently, right now, we spent $314,000 and $314,927, right? What you'll see in there, though, is that there's some expenditures that we didn't even budget for, okay? A lot of those expenditures that you'll see in there had to do, from what I believe, with carryover from the forensic audit, okay? They weren't budgeted for. Those invoices got approved, right? If we look down at contractual services, you'll notice that in contractual services, just very few items there. I believe that one item there, the Iron Mountain, I think that's coded to the wrong account. I think it needs to be reclassified out, okay? So when I started looking at this, what I realized is we only budgeted $150,000 this year for an audit, roughly. I've got $169,000 coming over into this year, and then I know I'm going to get invoices for $150,000 for 2024. We've got 2 audits that have lined up and have fallen into 1 year, and they're 2 very expensive audits because of the embezzlement that happened. In addition to that, there's additional costs that we're paying to an external accounting firm to assist in some of the peripheral around that audit, i.e. the forensic audit, as well as some other work they're doing. So when I sat down and started looking at this, I said, this isn't just about paying $169. This is trying to right-size all the additional contracts we had that are going to hit this year. One of the things that we have happened here is there was a contract that got signed March of 2025 with the external accounting firm. The funding source that was identified was other contractual services, right? You'll see there was a line item of $105,000 in there, okay? A month before, in February, that same account was given as a funding source for the HCM system that we implemented, right? Third-party payroll. So now what we've done is we've duplicated or spent the same dollar twice. Does that make sense?
So we did other contractual services for the Paycom contract.
Yes, ma'am. So what I'm trying to do now is say, okay, look, we need to take a breath and we need to right-size those 2 accounts for the finance department, for the city, so that we can do primarily 2 things. One, we need to close out the 23 and the 24 audit.
Yes, we
The
do.
23 audit, we got done in 30 days. I don't know how, but it got done. It's gone. The 24 audit is now complete. That was done in, I think, 15 weeks. However, before we can close that audit out, we need to take care of that prior year invoice.
Yeah, okay, so, thank you for all of that, and I guess my question now is, so what you're saying is the line item where we budgeted for the auditors, in the 24-25 budget, that $130,000 has already been spent?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then what we're talking about is, moving the amount of that invoice, which was $169,236.75, from our general fund budget, to our auditing line item, to our financial services, professional accounting auditing services line item, to cover this invoice for the 2023 audit.
That is correct.
Okay.
And we will have more items to go to this finance committee later on, cleaning up some other issues that he brought up already.
Yeah, okay.
And the other part of the answer to the question is, I've talked to both Kelly and Melanie that because the way the system is set up right now, if you enter this $169,700 into the system, it will automatically go into the payment process. And so they're trying to make sure with our other auditors that there is a method of which we can block the payment from automatically occurring so that once this is funded, that can be removed.
Okay.
And that was part of it, and then I said, the other part is you don't leave a piece of paper on the desk week after week. You make that an irritant to me.
Okay.
And then I will bring that to the council to be fixed. But I can't do it if I don't know about it, so that's the irritant.
Okay.
I
All right.
want everybody to understand right now what we have on the table to rectify those two accounts, okay, is y'all are needing $439,409 in the accounting and auditing account.
Okay,
And
can
you're
I
needing
hold up?
146 in the other one.
Okay, well, let me hold up right there because we don't have those items on the agenda yet. What we're dealing with is
Okay.
250425, which is paying this invoice. So we're not gonna deal with those other things right now. We'll deal with that on another night when those items hit the agenda. Tonight, we're gonna deal with paying this invoice.
Chair, can I-
Yes, yes, please.
I mean, we rely on the finance department to formulate our budget. So we came up with a budget, and I understand when things change. You know, we added the line item for the external, accounting help. But to say that if something comes in over budget, you're just not gonna do anything with it. I mean, I don't wanna hear that. I want you to come to us and say, this is over budget. That's what every department head does, and they come to us and they tell us that, so that we can address it then. It's very disturbing that you're coming up now with all these numbers, and we were not aware of it before now. So, thank you.
We'll expedite the process. I apologize for that.
Okay, so we have a need right now to transfer 169,236.75 from our general fund budget to our auditing line item to cover this outstanding invoice for BMSS for our 2023 audit.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Mr.
Second.
Brandt and a second from Mr. Harden. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
5-0. All right, thank you. We are moving on. All right, so 260425, request for consideration of a BMSS audit brief. This one, we.
Has to be pushed.
Yes.
Because we don't have this until this is paid.
Right,
And
so we'll carry over 260425 to a meeting after we get this invoice taken care of. All right, 270425 is a similar item to what we already did, which was presentation of the mid-year review by the finance director tonight, and I would entertain a motion to drop that.
Motion to drop.
Second.
All right, motion for Mr. Gwaltney, second for Mr. Alanon. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that is dropped. And then we have 280425, request to declare miscellaneous police department IT equipment surplus, and we have that list that was supplied to us, by Chief Broadhead. There is a number of, it looks like maybe desks, monitors, et cetera, and the motion is to surplus these items.
Make the motion to surplus the police.
All right, no, fire. No, police department, sorry. I said Chief Broadhead. Sorry, y'all. It's been a long night. Yeah.
7:30, we're still in finance.
Yeah, we're still in finance. We haven't even gotten to the other committees. All right, so Mr. Brandt made a motion to approve surplusing those police department IT items. A second from Mr. Allemon. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. That is approved. All right. Ooh, Lord have mercy. All right, 290425, request permission for the city manager to execute a contract with Shoal Engineering for engineering design and a company called Romtech for the purchase of a restroom/pavilion facility for the Greenway/soccer park, coming to us from Ms. Andrus and Kel Smith. Mr. Smith, you want to take this one?
Sure can.
With support from Ms. Andrus?
If you remember, last summer, we applied for a grant for a trailhead facility that looked a little bit different than what you see here. Because it was a trailhead facility, the focus was on a community space and restrooms, of course. And so this pavilion actually extended another 20 feet. We didn't get that grant. So we went back to the drawing board and we talked to Berkeley and Chief Broadhead and said, how can you use this facility also? One of the first things Berkeley said was, we need to cut the pavilion in half, and we need storage for mowers and a cart, which I think Chief Broadhead's going to be able to use also for EMS on the trail, on the Greenway. There are a lot of details around how we're going to pay for this, but we're basically going to use a co-op, Sourcewell, and I've talked to the public examiner's office in Montgomery. So we are a part of this co-op where we can purchase this for $191,000.
So it's a prefab.
It's a prefab deal, and they ship it on a truck, and then we have to bid the job for a contractor to install and assemble the pavilion facility. So this is kind of what it looks like in elevation. So on the back side of it, nearest the soccer park, there'll be 2 garage doors to get the mower and the carts in and out. And then the pavilion is 20 feet, which is bigger than what Berkeley says is at any other place. So.
Yeah, so that's still room to have a birthday party
That's
if
right.
you want to. Yeah.
And get out of the rain.
And get out of the rain if you're, yeah,
And
yeah,
get out of the
yeah.
rain.
And
And
outdoor
tell your buddy
classrooms.
that you want to meet him at the pavilion
Yeah.
if they trail
Yeah.
it.
And
Yeah.
outdoor classrooms, we've heard, when
That's
we
right.
went through and we reached out to tons of members of the community to get, input with local business owners or, the high school and Sanford, and we got letters of support saying they would use this space as outdoor. Friends of Shades Creek, Cabo River Society, they would use this space too.
Okay. And I believe, correct me if I am wrong, Mr. Smith, but I believe we are going to use some of those ARPA funds which have remained unspent are we not doing that?
We don't have any ARPA funds. This is all bond money.
I'm sorry, I said the wrong thing.
Right.
Bond money. Yeah, I knew what I was, again, it's been a really long night. My brain is scattered. Okay, so we're gonna use unspent bond money to fund this project since we did not get the grant that we were hoping to get. Okay.
That's right.
And that is, so the building itself, you said that is $191,771.35.
There you go. And then the other piece of this is to release the civil engineer to perform design services, provide site plans that we can bid.
And I was, and Randy, oh no, Randy is still here. Sorry, you were behind Mr. Segrist. I assume this requires a, footing. I mean, it's gonna require a foundation.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
Well, is that beyond your department's ability, or will we be
Yeah, I
able to
can
do
answer
that in-house?
Yeah, no.
No.
We're gonna bid all of that. stuff.
Everything's gonna get bid
Everything,
out.
yep.
Okay.
So the contractor will build the footing.
Yeah.
We'll assemble the building, we'll do
Okay.
the site work. There's utilities that are gonna have to come to the building. So,
Yeah, right.
all that'll be in a
In
bid package.
It's similar to the restaurant about the 6 acres.
Okay.
That's what we did on it.
Okay.
It's a fab build, and we built, they had the foundation done, and then came in and sat down on top of it.
Okay.
And the one on Watkins Trail too in Mount Brook, by Mount Brook Elementary
Yeah,
School.
by the school, yeah. All right, so the item is to approve the contract and purchase. Oh, there's 2 contracts?
Well, yeah, Joel is one.
Right, and then there's the ROMTech, yeah, for the purchase of the actual building. And does anybody have any questions? I'm sorry, I didn't ask if anybody had any questions about it.
Councilor Smith,
Yes.
I'm not on the committee, but just really quick. I noticed the ADA access, is that I assume that's to the pavilion, not to the trail from there, right?
So there will be ADA access. I didn't include this, and what I sent Brian, I probably should have. We drew a site plan when we applied for the grant that showed ADA parking spaces in front of this, like taking a couple of the existing parking spaces, turning them into ADA spaces to get to here, and then also access to the trail.
Okay.
So there's
great.
gonna be an 8-foot path where there's currently the gravel path. Yeah, we're gonna dress all that up.
That's fantastic.
That was actually part of our proposal, was that it was increased accessibility.
That's amazing, thank you.
All right, good question.
I'll make a motion for approval of both contracts.
All right, for approval for both contracts, motion for Mr. Gwaltney, second for Mr. Harden. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. 5-0, that is, both of those are approved.
There'll be 2 resolutions. just
Okay.
for the resolution.
Okay, perfect. 30-04-25, request for consideration of ordinances and resolutions associated with the 2025 general election and runoff election, coming to us from our city attorney, Mr. Kendrick. These are things that we have to address for our upcoming municipal election.
I sent them to you, but I bought a copy also.
Thank you.
So they were in what I sent last week.
I'm good, I have it.
Anybody else need one?
No, I'm good.
Let me go through them right quick.
Okay.
The first one is a resolution authorizes Bo to sign a contract with, or the city manager to sign a contract with Jefferson County to get the voting machines and supplies. We've got to do that. So for both the municipal election on the 26th of August and the runoff if there is one. The second one is appointing your city clerk as the absentee election manager, compensating at $50 a day, which is what we did for the special election compensation. The third is a resolution that defines the voting machines that we use, which is what the county supplies to us. We don't have machines. So we have to pass that resolution and file with the Secretary of State's office.
Okay.
All right, the fourth is the ordinance that calls the election. And this is a little bit of important because we have all new voting places, because we have all new wards. So we're gonna have to, in addition to, we're gonna have to send a notice out to every voter in Homewood of where their new voting place is.
Well, we got some.
Well, we got that from the county.
Well, that's not, that's not.
Well,
That's state.
You got one from Jefferson County, because they have to do the same thing we have to do.
Yeah.
And
But
we're
for-
moving out of the schools anyway, like, so everyone's gonna change
My
anyway.
only point is we have to send out
Okay,
a notice
yeah.
for everyone we normally.
We're required by law to do the notice.
Yeah, everybody has a new voting place.
Yeah.
And the voting places are gonna be the senior citizen for Ward 1 over on Oak Grove Road. Ward 2 is the Central Park. Ward 3 is the library.
Red Center,
Yes. Ward 4 is here at City Hall on the first floor. Now, in this ordinance, I've also added a provision that the chief of police has a right to reserve parking places behind the City Hall, because at lunch, you won't be able to get a parking place for voters.
Okay.
You need to be aware of, because these are all new voting places, everybody in Homewood's gonna be complaining that they don't know where to go, or that they shouldn't change their voting place. That's gonna come because it happens. We haven't had to in 20 years. so
Right.
we've
And
had
I
to see-
assume we'll have our voting managers in each of the polling places who will be directing people to their correct place if they show up
Correct.
at the wrong.
But there will be complaints.
Yeah, oh, sure. Yeah.
But, I hear you, but I will also say we were coming out of the schools anyway, so those of us that were voting in Shades Cahaba, we were never gonna vote there again.
And Edgewood.
In Edgewood, yeah, so there was change coming.
Correct, that change was gonna happen anyway.
That's my point.
And the
We've been
schools-
working with the county and the
Yes.
schools, and there will be no more voting in
It's schools.
And the schools are thrilled about it.
They are, and by the way,
Thrilled.
that's not just us, that's.
Everywhere.
That's other places in the county too.
Yeah.
Commissioner Boland in particular is really pushing that.
Yeah. All right, so, okay, we're up to calling the election.
Yeah, the notice of election, you'll have the mayor voted at large in Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3, Ward 4 council members voted within those wards.
Okay.
We've set out those voting places. There's a copy of the ballot, or just a form that's required by law.
Okay.
Also provides that the city clerk or the mayor, if the mayor's not a candidate, essentially has to provide voting lists. You'll have to appoint, the next ordinance is you have to appoint, the mayor has to give notice of the election on January the 10th.
Okay.
Excuse me, June the 10th.
June the 10th, okay.
Yeah. The last ordinance is the ordinance where you appoint the election officials, and Bo will come up with those. We have to do that by 15 days before the election, so we want to do it as soon as we can.
Okay.
I'd like to ask you to put all these, at least the first 4 on your agenda, so we can go ahead and adopt them. We have to adopt some of these before the end of May anyway. and
Right.
The sooner the better, so Bo can sign the contract and get the election.
And do these need to be done in separate ordinances?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't.
Each one of these is a resolution, and I've given you our ordinance.
Okay, and let me ask this question. I counted 8. Is that wrong?
8.
I counted 8, I thought.
Well, they're numbered.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
There's 7.
7, okay, sorry. I added one in there that wasn't correct. Okay, so you're telling me the top 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4 definitely need to be
On the next agenda.
approved for Monday night?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, could we go ahead and do the ballot form? I guess we can't really do the ballot until people are
No,
qualified.
you will do that. That is number 4.
Okay, all right. So do I have a motion to approve, at least for Monday night, the first 4?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay. All right, I got a motion from Mr. Alman. Who seconded that? Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Those 4 are approved, and then we'll handle the next ones when.
So we want to do something about, like, how do we remember, or will Mike, 5, 6, 7, will you just remind us to do that next time, or?
No, we can't. The only other one you have to appoint is the election officials, and we can't do that to vote. It's
Still closer to the election.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have to do it by August the 10th.
Okay.
We'll typically do it before that.
Yeah.
Counselor Smith, I just have a question for Mike.
Sure.
Related to this too, leading up to the public referendum, you provided us with a document, kind of like with a timeline with the deadlines to pass the ordinances. Okay. Okay. There was, got it, thanks. There was like an overview sheet that I thought would be helpful to make sure we meet the deadlines, that's all, but we can write it in, thanks.
Well, I mean, I can give you the calendar.
Yeah.
I think that'd be helpful.
The calendar, yeah, if you don't mind.
All right, okay, so, gone there, and then we'll deal with the rest of them when we get to that point on the calendar. All right, item 310425, request to authorize the city manager to sign an agreement with ICC CDS for laserfish support, coming to us from Brandon Sims. This is our scanning system.
Yes, currently the city uses Laserfish as document management platform, and the previous people that we were under support with, they had very limited capabilities.
Okay.
And so we would like to move to be under support of a group that is actually supporting one of our neighbors. They're supporting Vestavia.
Okay.
And all this does is pretty much allow them to formally take us on as a client. We've already paid the cost out for this year for the support, so this is just allowing them to formally take us on and help us.
Okay, all right.
I make a motion to approve, sign an agreement with ICC-CDS for laserfish support.
Okay, motion for Mr. Harden.
Second.
Second for Mr. Brandt. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. All right, 430425, request for consideration to create a deputy finance director, chief accountant position, coming to us from our city manager, Mr. Adams.
So we hired a contractor to do workload analysis, and it showed that there's enough workload at that level to be able to justify hiring a deputy deputy finance.
It's been a
director.
long night.
Yes, it has. And it would be a grade 32 chief accountant by our Jefferson County Personnel Board. They've already validated that preliminary with JJ. Bottom line is the workload is there. We still have more work to do to resolve all of the issues, and this person would take that routine workload up.
Okay. And can you tell us, because this was obviously not a position that was included in our budget originally.
Correct.
What the amount is and where we're going to get that money?
So it has to come from the general fund because it wasn't budgeted
Right.
in the first place.
Right.
I neglected to look at the pay band
Okay.
value.
Can you have
But
that
it's
just for
pay
Monday
band
night?
32.
Okay. Yeah, can you have a number for us on Monday night
I
before we?
will.
Okay. All right. Any questions from anybody? I know.
Just wait till next
No,
fiscal year.
we're still going. What? We haven't had a vote on it yet.
Can this wait till next fiscal year? Because, again, the budget process, we go through this, we look at all the positions. I understand this is new information, but I would prefer we handle it through the budget.
I know, yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Yeah, I, in general, I would agree with you. I think we're kind of in an extraordinary circumstance, because we're just trying to dig out of a hole that some people dug for us that we would like to get out of sooner rather than later.
This was a deliberate process that a previous finance director that we're trying to dig through and create the proper workload. That's all this is.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Didn't we approve some positions that we haven't hired already that are
We're
budgeted?
hiring
At least
one
some
data
of that
person.
is.
We're hiring one data person under Melanie, and we did not hire data under Candy. So yes, some portion of this is able to be done.
I guess I was just trying to clarify. I thought we had budgeted some positions at certain levels, but
We
had
did,
yet
and
to
like you
hire.
said,
and-
we hired one of those people.
Sure.
We're in
Yeah.
the process. We're in the
Right.
process.
Yeah, haven't done it yet.
But it was budgeted for them to be here the whole year.
Correct.
And so we're kind of starting late anyway with some of these, I don't know. Hopefully it
It's
will
not
help
as
offset
bad
some of the
as-
costs, but,
It's not as bad as it could be if we didn't have that person, but correct.
okay.
All right,
Thank you.
I see the mayor standing up.
Yeah, so, Walter and I don't often disagree, but we do on this. So this is my position. The sooner we get the proper people in the proper positions within finance, the sooner we can avoid some of the extra expenses that we are incurring right now with having help, temporary help being brought in. So I don't disagree that ideally we would do this in the budget cycle, but I think that because we are using temporary help, the idea of getting people in place, the proper people in place now, the sooner we do that, the sooner we can cut off the spigot on those other things.
And I will say also, Mr. Jones, since we're talking about this now in May, by the time we go through the personnel board to actually hire this person,
It's gonna be pretty close.
my guess is we're gonna be real close to the actual budget. And we will have already started talking about the budget, which then we can build this into the 25.
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the benefits of it would be that the person would be here to sort of observe the budget process and get more acclimated within Homewood to be a part of that process moving forward.
Yeah. All right.
One more, so, Lynn, I mean, you said temporary, I mean, if we bring these people on, is it a lifetime appointment, or is this a?
This is a permanent
Full-time
position.
position.
Yeah.
The workload has already been identified by the contract we hired to do the workload development.
And so basically this person, because right now we have Carl Riggs providing, temporary help with us to manage the workload in the finance department. And so this person would eventually just take that workload away and we would not have the temporary people.
Gotcha.
It would be that person.
All right,
Yeah.
I'll make the motion then.
All right, I have a motion from Mr.
Second.
Brandt. I have a second from Mr. Hart. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Do I have any opposed? All right, that is 5-0 to approve that, and dear Lord, we are adjourned.